Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 235, Under Her Spell P1. Let's go. Show me the beast that's inside you. Hee hee. Jules said in a playful tone and got up from her seat. Aaron smiled and retracted his sound isolation artifact before getting up as well. He gestured with his hand for his companion to proceed. Aaron found out after some time that Jules had led him outside the city of Lion Hearts. Their rental colts had carried them miles away from the city in a few hours. Where are we going exactly, Jules? Aaron finally asked after he chatted with Jules on random things during their journey. The latter smiled in response before speaking up. There's this natural pond nearby from where we are. Despite what you might expect, the water feels lukewarm to touch even during the night. Perfect for us to get immersed in. I thought we should spice things up from last time. Hope you don't mind. Hee hee. Alright. Why would I mind? I'm just glad I don't have to come up with killer pickup lines this time. It's gratifying when you get to spend quality time without having to work hard for it every once in a while, you know. Aaron said and chuckled a bit. He made Jules remember the way they had met and interacted the last time. She shook her head and mirthlessly smiled before replying to him as they continued their journey on their colts. I'm sure you know this, Ronnie. But I'll say this to highlight it again. Pickup lines don't work the way you think they do. The good ones can only fetch attention. It's the one you are trying to woo that decides if they should work or not. Ronnie didn't take long to comment as he sped up his colt to match up with Julie's speed. They serve as effective icebreakers, yes. And with such a fine lady by my side, I'll try to break or shave away the ice with all my might if I have to. Jules felt Ronnie's words working on her again the way they did last time. She smiled and pointed at the front before saying, hee hee. You don't need to break that ice when it has already been melted away, Ronnie. Look, our destination is right up ahead. I'll see what else your tongue can do apart from praising me so much. Ronnie and Jules eventually reached their destination. The pond was located at the edge of a small cliff and wasn't that deep. It was connected to a creek that was streaming down from the mountains in the distance. The running water would fill the pond before traveling downwards. But its temperature would rise while it was inside the pond. That was because there was a lava vein at the bottom of the pond. It had turned the pond into a natural spa. Aaron had to admit that the place was pretty amazing. The location was covered by dense vegetation around it. Plus, it was only 2 nights away from the full moon. So the moonlight and stars had added to the already pleasing ambience. The light breeze carried a faint and fresh scent of the wild. Aaron smelled it and found it pleasing. But he felt something was odd. He felt that the setting was too picturesque. Or rather, it felt too picturesque for him. So he asked Reen to confirm. What do you think? Aaron could hear Reen chuckle in his head before she replied. Hee hee. You sure took your time to notice it. Thankfully, you are using your head to think this time and not some other part. That's right. It's an rank illusion spell that Jules is casting on you. She is what you humans call an illusionist. Reen confirmed Aaron's doubts. By now he and Jules had both gotten off their colts. They were holding each other's hands as they walked towards the spa pond. The butcher could now see that the surface of the water was not serene as he thought it'd be. There were light bubbles that would pop up every so often. The reason behind the water staying lukewarm even during the night, he guessed. But why keep casting the spell on me now? And it sure isn't working the way it should if I can feel it is affecting my senses. So why is she still casting it? Reen pondered for a while before replying to her master's questions. I guess she doesn't know that it is not working. Your status as a non-human might have rendered the illusion spell on your senses practically useless. The spell itself isn't harmless. So maybe she wanted to lower your guard before drawing the truth from you that you wouldn't normally share. Hee hee. This lady still underestimates you. Aaron agreed with Reen's guess. His body's stats had been augmented to that of an E-ranker using E-rank strengthening he had achieved with the help of Reen. But it kept his intelligence unchanged. An E-ranker's illusion spell should have still worked on F-rank Aaron even when he was pretending to be an ace ranker. But his status as a non-human must have offset that logic. Julie's spell was meant to be cast on humans after all. As a result, Aaron felt his pleasure senses getting worked on. But his rationale stayed unaffected by that change. Now that I recollect the first time I saw this food, Julie. She had tried to cast the illusion spell on who she thought was Dom2 when you had sent me to talk with her. Her spell didn't work on me. But we can consider her to be a skilled illusionist if her spell can still affect you this much despite being a non-human. Aaron nodded internally at Reen before stopping at the edge of the pond. You look beautiful under the moonlight, Jules. Aaron committed as he embraced his companion. The latter returned the hug she received before saying softly, "Ronnie, I told you. You don't need to break the ice. Sometimes silence is golden. I know I don't need to. But I want to. This everyday night has turned into a surreal moment for me now that you are with me. I feel like I'm living inside a dream. The spell is working. Just as they had told me, the illusion spells work fine on anthropes." Jules felt relieved after she had assumed this point. Her vetting of Ronnie would be much smoother and reliable if her spell was in effect while she carried her Q&A round with her partner. Or so she thought. Chapter 236, Under her spell P2. The spell is working. Just as they had told me, the illusion spells work fine on anthropes. Thought Jules as she lifted her head and kissed Ronnie on his lips. They both started feeling each other's bodies as the light kiss turned into an extended lip lock. Aaron grouped Julie's butt cheeks with both his hands as she started undressing him. He acted a tad intoxicated as if still under the effects of her spell and tried to rush things up a bit. "Slow down there, Ronnie. Remember, business and pleasure need to get harmonized. Why don't you show me your therianthropic transformation and stay at it before we start enjoying each other's company?" Aaron acted as if drunk on the feeling of lust as he nodded at Julie's suggestion. Then he proceeded to execute the therianthropy transformation using Reen's help. This time he used Agatha's beastly features as a base. His eyes turned into that of a beast's as the pupils turned vertical. The rest of the beastly manifestation was the same as what he had observed with Agatha. Tweaking his mana signature was taken care of by Reen. She had based the alteration on what she had observed with Agatha. That's why Aaron's deviation in mana signature was akin to that of an anthrope's. The duo paused their activities and let Aaron complete his transformation. Jules looked at the changed side of Ronnie in front of her before commenting. My, Ronnie. You should have started with this the last time, you know. So many lost opportunities." Ronnie and Julie had been stripped of all their clothes by now. He stepped into the pond and stopped walking further as soon as he reached knee-level depth. Then he turned backwards and gave his hand to the illusionist that was with him before replying. "Don't worry about lost opportunities, Jules. We can always make new ones when the time is ripe. Like what we have this time." Jules took Ronnie hand in hand and followed him inside the pond. The water was pleasing to the skin and invigorated her. She felt that she should have cast the illusion spell on herself as well to enhance what she was feeling, just like Ronnie. Ronnie stopped stepping further into the pond as soon as the water reached his waist level. He then turned back and spoke up. "If I stay in this state tonight, I'll eat you whole, Jules. Hope you know what you are asking me to do," Ronnie said in a deep voice. He hadn't forgotten to ask Reen about modulating his voice as well when he had entered his transformation. He. "Don't worry, Ronnie. I can take it. You just empty your head and let your instincts take over you. Here, I'll lead the way." Saying that, Jules took Aaron's hand and placed it on her right breast. Her right nipple had hardened under the effects of her state. So Aaron started his assault on her body by firmly pinching the pink bud between his fingers. An ecstatic moan escaped Julie's mouth. She held Ronnie's hand that was fondling her breast and pressed upon it, telling him not to stop. The latter didn't need more encouragement anyway. He caressed her left butt cheek with his other hand while fine-tuning the pink nipple with the other. Julie's blue hair gave off a lustrous sheen as she tilted her head backwards, enjoying the ecstatic pain coming from Ronnie's fondling of her body. Pain. Since Ronnie was in his transformed beastly status, he had started getting rough with the illusionist. But surprisingly or unsurprisingly, she didn't mind. Her constant moans and constant chanting of Ronnie's name in ecstasy indicated she liked the rough treatment. Ronnie carried on his assault as his face drew closer to Julie's neck. His slightly canine teeth bit onto her neck. This was a move driven by Aaron's instincts. And as soon as he did, the blood that he tasted felt sweet in his mouth. Neither was he repulsed by tasting the foreign blood in his mouth. Do I like tasting blood now? Is this another consequence of being fused with Reen? Aaron aka Ronnie thought to himself as he withdrew from his act. He didn't mind tasting human blood. Neither did he care about the repercussions of the newfound trait he had found out about himself. Aaron didn't care that his very act could be deemed as cannibalism. Animals would eat others of their kind when they had to. Humans hypocritically thought they were above animals by putting such pretentious restrictions on themselves. And then they would proceed to commit even more vile deeds than animals ever could. Aaron's point of view was that if killing humans for the sake of his benefits was a normal thing for him, then devouring them was no different. But he had no desire to continue with the blood-drinking feast just yet. Ronnie, you beast. More. I want more. Ronnie obliged. Both of their groins were immersed in water. The butcher first started to play with Julie's clit as he fingered her love hole with her other hand. The warm water doubled the lady's pleasure level even further as she allowed her partner easy access by adjusting her legs. She is almost about to lose her concentration and stop her spell execution. Reen informed Aaron. The latter nodded internally and stopped driving the illusionist to the edge. For some reason, he thought the lady should be in control of her senses while assuming that he wasn't. Ronnie started praising Jules some more before resuming the act. That momentary respite was enough for the illusionist to get back to her senses and maintain her spell. She started asking Ron some personal questions after ensuring from her end that he was way too deep to care about hiding facts from her. Their act carried on as she proceeded to guide his actions. She asked him about his experiences in Beast Bloods. Then proceeded to ask him about his recent adventure in the city of Nilami. Like always, the butcher added a hint of truth in his lies and made her drink the cocktail of his bullshittery. Jules thought she was in full control of the situation. But unbeknownst to her, Ronnie was choosing appropriate words to answer her interrogative questions with. Ronnie had figured out that Julie needed the handicap of her illusion spell to know that whatever she was getting from him was the truth. So he just made her think that everything was working out her way. The most compelling illusions were those when the subject thought they were in complete control of the situation after all. Chapter 237, Under Her Spell P3. Go deeper, Ronnie, that's it, there, right there. Jules was getting screwed hard by Ronnie in his beastly form. By now, her interrogation round was over. She didn't have to maintain her illusion spell anymore. So in this round, she let go of herself and started enjoying every moment of being fucked to perfection by her companion. But Julie's consistent guidance was annoying to Ronnie. What's this about right there? Bitch, there are only 2 places down south my dick could be in. And you should be glad I can go deep if I want to. Go deeper. Huh? What would other guys have done if you asked them to suddenly pull the leftover dick out of their stomach? Aaron aka Ronnie couldn't help but have this thought. He had lifted one of Julie's legs with his hand while she firmly stood on her other. The leg spread had been aptly used by Ronnie as he could perform deeper strokes. Wet sounds filled the surroundings. As they were still immersed in waist-level water, the sounds of water play were prominent. They had an auditory pattern about them, dictated by Ronnie's slow yet consistent moves. He nutted inside Jules after a while. But that didn't make him stop. He kept on driving his beast-sized cock hard inside her vaginal canal and pulling back out almost its entire length before shoving it deep inside her yet again. Someone is looking at both of you from a distance using an artifact. Possibly this girl's associate? Reen's voice sounded in Aaron's head. That made him stop for a few seconds before resuming what he was doing. He wasn't surprised. Now he understood why this vixen had brought him here. It was to show what she had caught to her accomplice. Aaron kept on fucking Jules. The latter had come twice now. But since they were doing it while standing partially immersed in water, her post-cum state wasn't apparent. As the duo's state of affairs continued, pond water and pound water kept mixing. Clean my cock with your mouth, Jules. Ronnie commanded Julie after a while. Just as a new climax was about to be washed over Jules, her partner interrupted his actions with a selfish request. The tone of his voice was commanding, oozing undisputed dominance. I don't dislike it. Hee. Julie thought to herself as she proceeded to go down on Ronnie. The latter grabbed her head and shoved his dick down her windpipe as soon as she took it inside her mouth. Her gag reflex kicked in and Jules started choking on Ronnie's dick. But that didn't stop him from driving his dick deep inside her mouth. He had grabbed her head by her head, giving him the control he needed to dominate his partner while having a blowjob. Jules soon started to enjoy giving head too. She used one of her hands to excite her pussy while she took Aaron's cock inside her mouth with its entire length. It's coming. Aaron said and pushed Julie's head against his cock from behind. His produce soon found a cozy place down the latter's throat. Julie didn't waste even a drop of Aaron's produce as she gulped it down entirely. There was also a bit of water mixed in, but that only made it easier for her to swallow the load she was given. Arg. Ronnie grunted in pleasure as he released all his load inside Julie's mouth. What surprised Julie was the fact that his dick was still standing rock hard post-nut. This technique of yours sure seems intriguing. And Jule got back on her knees and commented. Ronnie could see it in her eyes as they met his. It was fear. And what, Jules? Ronnie asked as he helped her stand up. The latter smiled mirthlessly before replying. And surprising. People would do everything you ask them to do on a condition that you give this technique to them. Yeah. Just be an Ozenwood's butcher and mess with all the big hots in the kingdom. Aaron spoke in his head as he used his Ronnie alias to chat with Jules before their next session. The two took some breathers and got out of the pond. They continued their sessions all night as Ronnie alternated between releasing his load inside Julie's 3 openings. Julie had to wait until dusk fell before she requested retirement. This time Ronnie didn't force her. He soon got out of his beastly state and looked at his partner who was busy getting dressed up. He too followed her lead. Soon they were as prim and proper as they were before their extended carnal act. The person who was watching you has left the area. It seems you checked out in their eyes. Using her mana sense to confirm it, Reen said to Aaron. That was all he needed to hear before asking his next set of questions. Now that you've confirmed my anthrope status, care to tell me what do you guys need me for? Ronnie asked with a stoic expression on his face. This time, he was completely blank about Julie's intention in approaching him this way. Your status as an anthrope is more significant to us than you, to be honest, Ronnie. Especially when you are now a rogue member of Beast Bloods who hasn't gotten back to them yet. Ronnie raised his eyebrows but remained silent. So it was his supposed anthrope status they were after. But the Illuminati aren't Beast Bloods. Why are they searching on anthropes then? This question popped in Aaron's head. But Julie wasn't going to tell him answers to all his questions just yet. To elaborate further on what she was saying, the former had to sign a non-disclosure agreement with her. The Illuminati have found an entrance to an ancient purgatory. The exploration team needs a certain number of anthropes for us to open it completely and see what's inside it. Having finally received confirmation of Aaron's status, Julie explained to him why she had approached him. The butcher had already confessed to Jules while supposedly under her illusion spell that he was an ex-member of Beast Bloods with no intention of joining them again. She needed his presence as an anthrope to open purgatory. Chapter 238, Ranker's Purgatory. Jules needed Aaron's presence as an anthrope to open purgatory. A Ranker's Purgatory, or just purgatory, was similar to a Ranker's Utopia in many ways. It was a separate dimension created by S-rank entities in their final stage of the rank to choose their successor by testing their mettle. But unlike the Ranker's Utopia, a purgatory was created by heretic rankers of their time now known as cultists. A purgatory was much more brutal and dangerous to explore than a utopia. Purgatory exploration usually results in heavy casualties. But these risks carried substantial rewards. A purgatory usually contained the S-rank entity's complete inheritance. High-ranked heretic rankers of their times would rob and plunder all the riches they could find. And then they would dump all their loot in the separate dimensions they created. As a result, a purgatory usually contained a variety of riches that appealed to rankers and cultists of different paths and elements. Purgatory was a sought-after place despite the risks it carried because it offered heftier rewards upon its successful conquest. Aaron finally understood what the non-disclosure contract was for. It seemed that the Illuminatis wanted to keep this purgatory a secret from prying eyes. His expressions of surprise were then quickly replaced by stoicism as this understanding dawned on him. He let Julie continue. They say the way to Elysium is through purgatory. Because of the special nature of this purgatory, this statement couldn't be more accurate. It must hold a lot of unseen ranking resources we could use. Now that you know and have signed the contract, I'll ask again. Are you interested in exploring the purgatory with the Illuminati? Ronnie shook his head before raising another of his doubts. I'm not that easy to commit, Jules. You know that. I understand the secrecy and your extended line of questioning. But why the need to keep things a secret from other cultists? I have known cultist organizations joining hands with others of their kind in exploring the purgatories found in the past. The things you discovered are ideal for you to explore with Beast Bloods. Why the secrecy? Jules chuckled in response to Ronnie's query before explaining further. It seems you were kept away from the organization's politics when you were in the Beast Bloods. That bunch of ragtag cultists are wilder than hungry boars found in the wild. What do you think they will do when they find a purgatory made exclusively for them? They will try to outplay us, the ones who have found it first. Finders keepers, Ronnie. We don't want to share the purgatory with anybody else. Our appetite is that big. Cultist organizations forming alliances isn't a novel phenomenon. In general, those seeking to explore purgatory seek out allies to share the damage and mitigate. But Jules trailed her explanation, hoping her companions turned allies would get what she was referring to. The butcher didn't disappoint her. But cultists are cultists. They would betray and backstab anyone for greater benefits. They would find loopholes in contract or face the grim after effects of breaching the contract itself to gain shallow benefits. Jules nodded her head before taking his line of thoughts further. That's right. The Illuminati have seldom operated with other cultist organizations. That's because we understand how other organizations work. We have much better and efficient ways to deal with such problems. In general, we would activate our sleeper cell contacts within the kingdom's hierarchy to find us external help. We usually try to sort such problems by ourselves without involving any other cultist organization. Anonymity and no-mess operations are our forte after all. It's only when things get out of control do we look for allies. But this is not the time to look for allies, Ronnie. This is our time to try to get all the benefits purgatory has inside it for ourselves. Aaron scratched his chin in Ronnie's form. Another obscure point became clear to him at this point. So the reason this vixen is looking for rogues from the Beast Bloods is so that they won't report it to their organization. Their absence would not be noticed by the same. Her illusion spell was for her to confirm that I'm indeed an ex-beast blood and not connected to the organization anymore. Reen was also thinking of another point after she processed what the vixen had said to them. She let her master know what she was thinking. The Illuminatis fought with an unknown cultist organization in the previous timeline's future, right? Maybe it was because of this purgatory that it had found. The other organization must be the Beast Bloods. Since this anthrope-dominated organization partakes in the path tabooed by the kingdom, all the information related to its existence and activities would get heavily censored or redacted entirely. Aaron agreed with Reen's conjectures. He even praised her before adding further. It seems the Illuminatis didn't have a choice but to fight with the Beast Bloods in my previous timeline. The high-ranked entities of Beast Bloods are pure heretics at their core. When they discover the peculiarities of the purgatory in question, they will act with desperation. The Beast Bloods likely discarded or didn't care about dominating the resources when they discovered that they couldn't take on the Illuminatis alone. That means they leaked the news to other cultist organizations in the hopes of raising a united front to fight against it. It might have forced the Illuminati's hand, and it was forced to look for allies against the Beast Bloods and the allies they had found. That was how the war among cultist organizations might have taken place in my previous timeline. Ronnie, what are you thinking? Are there any questions you want to ask? Aaron's dialogue with Reen was interrupted by Julie as she thought he had some questions on his mind. The latter shook his head before giving her the reply to her earlier question. No. Everything is clear. I'm in, Jules. But I'd need some time to prepare. Like a few weeks to 2 months. Will it be okay? Aaron agreed to join the Illuminati's expedition, but with a condition. He couldn't just walk into a lion's den without preparing for countermeasures. Most of all, he didn't trust the Illuminati. As sophisticated as they might seem in handling their business, they were cultists at their core. In this life, Aaron had decided that he would do the backstabbing and not the other way around. Chapter 239, Bonus Lady Z. I'm in, Jules. But I'd need some time to prepare. Like a few weeks to 2 months. Will it be okay? Aaron raised his condition. Jules was expecting this, so she agreed to it immediately. That would have been the case even if you didn't ask about it, Ronnie. My organization also needs to look for more rogue anthropes to join us in our exploration. Plus, we need to analyze purgatory and find out to whom it belongs. This is an ancient purgatory, Ronnie. Ancient even by purgatory standards. So we cannot let our guards down. We can take all the time we need and prepare ourselves for the unthinkable before we even think about entering that separate dimension. So take your time. We are in no rush. Aaron nodded at Jules after hearing her reply. He had already started thinking about the things he'd need to explore purgatory. Aaron would have suggested Agatha join the exploration as well. Unlike him, she was a genuine anthrope after all. But her association with the real him was part of the official kingdom record. His name would get linked up if he tried to sneak an ally into the exploration team. Maybe he could talk with the guys that were caught by Aaron's team while they were on their way towards the city of Silvermoon and get them on board. But they were now part of the city administration's resources. It wouldn't just hand them over to him because he needed them. Aaron needed to come up with a different approach. Agatha was his valuable pawn because of her involvement in his business. She had started handling his business well these days. He couldn't just put her at risk for this exploration even if he finds a way to sneak her inside the exploration team. Reener and the rest of the team would serve perfectly as his disposable weapons within the exploration team. But to release them from the clutches of the city's administration, he needed to come up with another shady plan. I didn't want to do this. However, exploring purgatory is far too critical. Sigh. Blackmail it is. Aaron immediately thought of a makeshift plan and kept it aside for the future. The details needed to be fine-tuned so his hands do not get burned in the process. You are spacing out way too much, Ronnie. Are you sure everything's all right? Julie's concerned voice landed on Aaron's ears and he snapped out of his inner thoughts. He smiled at her before replying. Oh, I was just remembering the last night we had. It seems I was so hyped about our time together that my memories have become fuzzy. Hee. Would you like to create new ones with me in their place? Julie rolled her eyes before replying in denial. Oh, cut me some slack, Ronnie. I like things to be a bit rough, yes. But it'll be beyond torture if I engage any more in those activities with you. Aaron chucked before agreeing to Julie's decision. Haha. You can't blame me for trying my luck. Anyway. Where are we heading next? Jules shook her head before clarifying her stance. We are not going anywhere. You are. I come here to relax often. And I'd like some time alone. So. Aaron nodded after understanding what Julie was talking about. He bid her adieu by kissing her on her lips before departing from the place. Julie was left all alone. She waited by the pond for quite some time, watching her reflection in the water below. The dawn break arrived. And with it, came a shadow that appeared behind Julie. The illusionist could see the reflection of that shadow on the surface of the water. The shadow was of a mature lady who seemed to have a huge scar on her left cheek. Her features made her a very attractive woman in her 40s. But the scar gave her a domineering vibe. Lady Z, did you find him to be suitable for our mission? Julie turned around and bowed in front of Z. The latter sized up the illusionist before replying with a hint of tease in her voice. I'm surprised you can still stand on your own 2 feet after your rigorous activities last night. Do you need some more time to recuperate? Julie's cheeks turned red after listening to Z's comment. But before she could come up with a satisfactory reply, the latter carried on. All right. No need to get flustered. It was part of the mission after all. So I understand. And there's nothing wrong with seeking pleasure in the work you do. That boy seems quite suitable for our mission. I was keeping tabs on your spell execution with my artifact as well. You were dangerously close to breaking your spell. Thank the heavens, things worked smoothly and our vetting was successful. The person who tipped off the city of Silvermoon about the Beast Blood's hideout has done us a huge favor. There are a good number of rogue anthrops roaming around in this part of the kingdom because of it. We just need to find enough of them before we think about our next set of plans. So far, you did a fabulous job. Keep in touch with this Ronnie guy. Use any means necessary to get inside his head again if you find a chance to do so. This bitch thinks I'm some cheap slut who'd open her legs for anything that remotely resembles a dick. Well, to be honest, I'm indeed a slut. But I sure ain't cheap. And with Ronnie, it is more than just a casual fling. This granny won't get it? Julie thought to herself before nodding at Z's instructions. There was no point in telling her senior about what she felt about Ronnie. The lady was one stone-cold bitch. It was now Julie's time to retire from the place, leaving Z all alone. Once she was alone, the lady looked in the direction Ronnie had gone off to and couldn't help remembering what she had felt back then when she was observing Ronnie from a distance. Why do I get the feeling I wasn't the only observing party last night? It feels like there was someone keeping tabs on me as well. Chapter 240, Bonus Tracking Spell. Renita was seen using her ranger-specific spells to lead her team through the Beast Sanctuary. Casting her tracking spell in the vicinity, she attempted tracking the team's target for the mission. It was tracking a sounder of wild boars known as Earth Suidi. The Besank mission the team had accepted was to collect 40 tusks of Earth Suidi after all. Earth Suidi was an Earth element wild boar species in the F rank. It was known for having a tough hide and exceptional endurance. Plus, its inherent Earth element spell would allow it to create a sturdy exoskeleton made of Earth, covering most of its body. Earth Suidi would literally become a tough nut to crack once it utilizes its inherent spell. Furthermore, it would travel in packs, traversing through the forest in search of food. It was an omnivore species and its appetite knew no restrictions. Killing an entire sounder of Earth Suidi and collecting the tusks was not an easy task because of these traits. Therefore, there were few takers among F-ranker students for this mission. Aaron had selected this mission because of its lucrative value. The reward in MERPs was enough of a temptation. Plus, the mission would test all of its team members' progress as well. It would give him a fair idea about how his party is fair as a whole in real-life scenarios. Renita's wind element tracking spell was simple. The wind would pick up the trails of various signs of life around her as she cast the spell. Then a group of dense gusts of white wind would flow in the directions of those signs of life while creating runic patterns in the air. The runic patterns would be based on the signs of life the tracking spell has picked up. So they held a meaning that the rangers could understand and decipher for the most part. Therefore, a skilled ranger would be able to tell more details about the target they were tracking by looking at the runic pattern their tracking spells would create. A reckless ranger would miss the obvious warning signs that the runic patterns imply, thus leading their team astray. It was obvious that the ranger class had drawn parallels between it and the historian class. But unlike the spells in the historian class that generated in-depth analysis of recent past events, the spells in the ranger class were fine-tuned to give only the necessary information for tracking while omitting the rest. The ranger class spells were also less taxing on the rangers. The historians would only be called upon by the team when the purpose of their task was to know what had happened at a particular place. The rangers would be better at tracking the team's target in real time. Renita was using her spell to do the same. After she cast her spell, there were many runic patterns created in the air around her. She dispersed the runic signs which indicated old signs of life as well those that indicated solo or a small group of animals. Her team wanted to track an entire sounder of boars after all. She finally saw the runic pattern that was indicative of her target after a while. She dispersed the rest of the runic pattern and concentrated on the one she zeroed in on. Renita had benefited significantly by being guided by Almeri, who was also a wind element tracker. The latter's lectures had been paid by Aaron to help his ranger in progressing further in her class. Aaron paid significant attention to raising his team's ranger. And that investment was showing its effect now. Renita quickly understood the patterns and informed her team about the sounder's current direction, its strength, and the ballpark range of distance away from the team members. This range was based on the traversing speed and elapsed time. According to Renita's estimations, the sounder they were tracking carried at least 25 members in it. They were at least 7 Earth-suity adults with a late-stage F-rank ranking. There were around 9 members that were in the lower stages in the F rank. Rest were unranked boars, possibly young infants who followed their parents around. The number of F-rank beasts in the sounder wasn't small. But Aaron had said to his team members that slaying this group of wild boars won't be too difficult for the team if every member played their roles right. During their trip through the forest, most of the White Raven team members were tense. All except Raimi, who had put his worries to rest as soon as Aaron told him not to worry. He would chat with his team members as they tracked their targets. A team member's worry would be relieved by his fearlessness wrapped in the comic touch of his lisp. It was the team's first Basank mission after all. And their shadow team leader had selected one of the most difficult missions a team of first-year students could find in the Basank. How far are we from the target? Raimi asked Renita while looking at her with a serious expression. As if itching for battle with the beasts, he had already drawn his sword out. It seemed that he wanted to show his improvement to his idol. By now everyone in the White Raven could understand what Raimi was trying to say, even when his lisp twisted his speech way too much. The ranger tried not to laugh at his question and answered honestly. We should be about an hour away from their current spot according to our and the sounder's traversing speed. Aaron, should we rest and recuperate before contact is made? We've been traveling for hours now. Renita asked her crush after thinking about her teammate's condition. Jake was panting hard and Belle looked mortifyingly exhausted. Becky also gave her the hint that she needed to relieve herself. All right. Guys, we'll stop here for a while. Get fresh and eat something. We'll discuss battle strategy as soon as everyone has their grub. The butcher agreed to his ranger's suggestion. They needed a sound plan before starting their battle with one of the fiercest groups of animals in the F rank. Chapter 241, Dying Shrills. The butcher agreed to rest after his ranger suggested it. They needed a sound plan before starting their battle with one of the fiercest groups of animals in the F rank. So AOES right off the bat or frontal attack? Steve asked while taking a bite of his ham and cheese sandwich. Other team members were also having their fill before their upcoming big boar hunt. Neither. AOE won't be effective on F-rank boars because of how distanced they would be from each other even when traveling in a sounder. And frontal attack from a particular direction will only push the sounder to travel in the opposite direction, increasing our work. Aaron said while having his second steak. These days he would often carry heavy meals to curb his increased hunger. His team members had observed the guy who always ate scarcely, changing his food habits so drastically. But they thought that Aaron's growth spurt had kicked in, increasing his appetite. Aaron had also observed that his hunger had increased. He knew the reason behind it. But he didn't mind. As long as he didn't become fat like a certain someone in their group, he didn't mind indulging in his newfound gluttony. So what do we do? Lay traps? Becky asked as she had a mouthful of veg salad. She had changed her diet as well. The salad she was eating contained herbs that were said to cleanse the mana circuits within the ranker's body. The White Raven members knew this because Becky had made sure everyone knew about the health and ranking benefits her salad had. Still, nobody seemed interested in taking a bite of her pro-health food. It would have been ideal to lay traps and chip away the number of F-rank beasts. But we don't have that much time. We need to wrap this mission as fast as we can. Aaron said and licked his fingers that were coated in the oil left behind by the steak. He had finished his second steak and was thinking of having another. What do you mean we don't have much time? This mission needs to be completed 6 days from now on. That is enough time for us to lay low and decrease our chances of being cornered by those damn pigs. Becky asked Aaron as she took a large bite out of her salad in frustration. She wasn't willing to face so many F-rank wild boars at once. After all, her AOES were her forte. And they won't do much against these animals which were spread across a large area. Okay. Let me correct that. I don't have time to spend 6 days on a mission of this level. Just follow my plan and we'd be back at the academy with our first ever team mission accomplished with flying colors. Additionally, you have to keep taking on new missions in my absence. You need to return my loan amount, remember. You won't be able to do that anytime soon unless you streamline the missions you take. Aaron said with nonchalant expressions. He didn't have time to spend 6 days completing the Basank mission. The butcher had too many things lined up to care about completing the mission with textbook perfection. He used his loan to compel them. They were already scared of Aaron charging them with crazy interest if they didn't pay him back in full soon. Aaron didn't want anyone to ask him useless questions any further and explained. My plan is simple. We encircle the sounder from any possible direction. Then we'll use Renita's long-range attacks to kill some of the young and unranked boars. That will enrage the adult bars and they won't try to run for a while. We will not kill all the young boars. To protect them, some of the adult boars will stay behind the sounder. The boars assigned to attack us will come for us at once. And since we are attacking from multiple directions, they'll also have to split up. We'll launch our mid and close range attacks as soon as the boars come in our vicinity. If they try to retreat after seeing they don't stand a chance against us, we'll again target their younglings. That will keep them fixated on one place. It would make our job of hunting them much easier. Aaron explained his plans while having his third steak. He was finally feeling satiated, so he took his time having his meal. The butcher wanted to use the boar family's younglings as a hostage to efficiently kill them all. Becky didn't find the idea too comforting, but she didn't object. This was a beast sanctuary. Human values and rules aren't even worth a fart in this place. So she didn't pretend as they did in this case. But all of a sudden, 3 younglings in the boar family cried in shrill tones when the bullets hit their heads. Those shrills were all they could muster before their death, and their bodies fell on the lush grass beneath them. The adult boars were busy eating the grass at this time when they heard the sound of their younglings dying out of the blue. They snorted their noses and rushed to the younglings' bodies that were lying lifeless on the ground. They tried sniffing the younglings' mortal wounds but only found traces of foreign mana they couldn't identify. The wind bullets had been dispersed as soon as they did their job after all. But the adult boars didn't have to track their new enemies because they showed themselves up in 4 different directions. The boars' eyes turned red as they observed the enemies closing in on them. The boars assumed their roles without seemingly no communication taking place among them. Some of the F-rank boars encircled their younglings, taking them under their protection, while others eyed the incoming enemy while scratching the earth beneath them with their hoofs. It was clear with the boars' intentions that they were not planning to let things slide and let their enemies have their way. Unfortunately for them, their enemies wanted them to be in such a state in the first place. Chapter 242, Breath of Fire. Renita, that's enough. Keep the rest of the young boars alive. Aaron had split his team into 4 groups. His group contained only him and Renita as fighters. Bell was with them. But he was prepared to stay behind and provide support with his fire element spells. Aaron shot towards the boar, which was also heading his way with everything it got. It had already executed its earth element spell, enabling it to don a sturdy exoskeleton. Its animal instincts had informed the beast that Aaron's lightning element was going to be not that effective against it. Aaron had executed his blitz steps along with blitz bolt on his 2 katars. But this time, instead of using any time element spell, he was trying a fire and lightning combo. Aaron used the fireball spell he had learned and altered it a bit so that it would coat his weapons in the fire. Dicerus left and right were now seen getting coated in tongues of purple-blue lightning and restless light orange flames. The flames would try to retake the shape of a fireball. However, Aaron commanded them to stay dancing on the sharp edges of his weapons. He ran towards the approaching boar while trying to sync his lightning and fire element spells with each other. The fire element spells weren't that effective against the earth element defensive spells either. But they were still better than the lightning element spells that had practically no effect at all. Aaron didn't activate his time element spells because although the boar was charging towards him at an alarming rate, its speed wasn't something he couldn't handle. Plus, the earth element defensive spell had also slowed it down to some extent by restricting its natural moments. Renita stayed behind with Belle to protect him. With their long-distance spells, she and the historian were supposed to provide support. Renita started shooting her wind bullets and targeted the chinks present at the boar's joints. She was trying to avoid the boar's exoskeleton and make her bullets reach its skin. Aaron had already told his team members that the beasts' bodies were a significant treasure for them. They were only told to gather the tusks if they strictly followed the Bison mission's instructions. But they could still sell the beast bodies and make a side profit out of them. The Scrooge didn't want to waste any of his efforts after all. By doing the auction in Nilami, he had reaped the rewards of his revenge. It was only natural that he'd maximize his profits the most from this deal as well. This prevented him and his team members from attacking carelessly. They were only allowed to damage the beasts' heads. Plus, the tusks that were present near the beast's mouth needed to stay undamaged as they were part of the mission. So the choices the White Raven members could attack the incoming boars with became very restrictive. Still, Aaron's strategy of making some of the boars protect their younglings while the others splitting up from their sounder to attack them had played in the team's favor. That's because the team members weren't bombarded with multiple targets at the same time anymore. They could have a breather while being ensured that the rest of the F-ranker boars would stay behind. Renita's precision-driven, wind bullet shots didn't damage the boar per se. However, it certainly limited its speed and movement. That was enough for Aaron, who was running short on his go-to-time element spell. The boar's seemingly unstoppable charge was stopped somehow when its tusks met Aaron's weapons. The boar was just a tad shorter than Aaron in stature. But its curved tusks were longer and shooting upwards, making them akin to a pair of curved swords. Aaron was shot backwards while the boar stayed rooted in its place right after their contact was made. But that didn't stop the butcher from approaching his target again. The boar would have gained momentum on Aaron right after pushing him backwards. But it was stopped by the ranger and the historian's joint efforts. That's right. Bell was also providing support with his fire apparition trying to attack the boar up front. The fire apparition this time wasn't humanoid but the boar itself. Although it looked like Bell was only casting one spell, he was using two. Having traced the sign of life, the first one created the fire apparition of the beast they were battling. The second spell allowed him to control that apparition the way he wanted using his mana sense. Of course, there were a few restrictions placed on using this combo spell as well. Plus, the DPS value of such a spell combo wasn't decent. It only served to distract the enemy or keep it engaged until the backup showed up. The historians never excelled in combat spells. But that didn't mean they didn't have any. With the right set of spells, some historians were also known to have risen above their class stereotype and dominated their battlefields. The fire apparition Bell had used wasn't that strong against the boar either. At most the boar would feel its exoskeleton getting heated up and feeling a little burnt. However, this was not enough to get the boar to retrace its steps and fall back. The real boar ran right through the fire apparition boar when it collided with it. Bell wasn't skilled enough in solidifying his apparitions after all. In addition, the fire apparition boar also did not suffer any injuries. That meant that Bell could make the spell collide with his enemies numerous times as long as he could support the mana consumption. Plus, the spell worked as a close, mid, and long-range attack. Renita and Bell provided the respite Aaron needed to charge at the boar once again. He used his blitz steps to come closer to the beast. He maximized the movement spell's effect and shot upwards, seemingly vanishing from his place. The next moment he appeared on the beast's back. Aaron knew the beast's body wasn't able to get affected by any of his lightning element spells. So he didn't bother to use his AoE. Aaron caught the beast's tusks from above by bending a bit. Then he brought his face close to the beast's eyes before casting another fire element spell. Breath of Fire. Chapter 243, Open Sesame. Aaron executed his fire element spell close to the boar's eyes. He had selected that region because the exoskeleton couldn't cover the beast's eyes. Eek. The F-rank boar cried in pain and anger. It had gotten blind at this point. So it let its instincts take over and ran straight towards Renita and Bell. This bitch won't die this easily. I need to do something else. Aaron thought and tightened his grip around the beast's tusk with his left hand to secure himself on top of the beast as it kept on running. He then took out Dicerus right that he had just stored inside his ID stone before aiming its tip straight at the beast's eyes. Aaron had coated his weapon with fire and lightning element spells. But this time it became detrimental to him as the beast sensed mana fluctuations reaching for its blind eyes and tilted its head forward in an exaggerated manner. The beast also stopped suddenly as he did that action. The force of inertia suddenly turned zero for the beast's body. But the same could not be said for the adventurer's body which was riding on top of its head. Aaron was thrown in the air as the beast stopped its advance abruptly. His weapon was just a few centimeters away from the beast's vulnerable eyes when the beast managed to shake him off of his head. Damn it! Aaron thought as he adjusted himself in the air before safely landing on his 2 feet some meters away from the beast. He was thrown back a few meters more by the force with which the beast had managed to throw him while his legs were still on the ground. Aaron cursed himself for running fire and lightning element spells through his weapons. He had understood that the mana fluctuations were the reason behind the beat getting tipped off of his attack despite being blind. Renita, aim near the damn boar's hooves. Don't take a shot at it for the time being. Bell, I know it'll be tough for you but create one more fire apparition and surround the beast from front and back. Don't make the apparitions attack it. They are going to serve as a roadblock for the beast. Aaron decides to corner the blind beast using Bell's fire apparitions. He didn't like running around with the beast. So he was planning to make it appear as though it's been boxed. With Renita sending it warning shots and Bell covering the beast from 2 directions, the boar had only one way left. And Aaron was waiting for it to make use of that path he had specially kept open. This time, the beast followed Aaron's script. It sensed that its left and right sides were dangerous to approach because of the fire apparitions. The way behind had been blocked by Renita's warning shots. The beast brain made the only logical choice it could think of and decided to head towards Aaron's way even when it knew someone was present there. The butcher nodded to himself after seeing that the beast had decided to approach the seemingly least threatening path for itself. Dicerus left and right were both called out this time. The butcher knew that since he had attacked its eyes, it would be extra sensitive around that part of its body. So he needed to attack the other vulnerable part of the beast where the exoskeleton didn't cover the flesh. Damn it! I need to clean my weapons thoroughly after this fight. Aaron's face suddenly seemed to have the grim shadow cast upon it as he realized what must be done to slay the beast. He activated Blitz Bolt and stacked it, and ran straight at the beast. It was but a moment's delay for him to reach the beast. The beast's tusks were again a few meters away from colliding against Aaron's dual weapons. But this time, Aaron wasn't looking for another collision. He activated sedated perception just before the weapons touched the tusks. The butcher found himself in a stagnated world, with the beast slowly approaching him with reckless abandon. This time, instead of jumping over the beast, Aaron ducked down and moved forward. He crawled beneath the beast's torso and came out from behind it. Aaron saw that the beast's genitalia was also covered by the exoskeleton while he was passing under it. When he got behind the beast's back and stood up, he saw the only thing that wasn't covered by the exoskeleton, the beast's anal opening. The beast suddenly sensed that the human approaching him from the front had vanished. It was expecting the human to pull the same stunt as he did last time, jumping on top of it and targeting its eyes. So it was ready for it. But then it sensed that the vile human had somehow gotten under its torso. It was able to sense this since the human's movement spell had lightning tongues encircling his legs. The lightning streams would send tickling sensations whenever they were near the beast's body. So it didn't need eyes to make itself aware of its existence in the vicinity. The beast was confused, but it couldn't think of more complicated thoughts than this. It decided to continue on its path. The boar intended to break the siege after all. Not take part in a battle that it could feel it was going to lose. So it decided to speed up its retreat and join the sounder where it could feel safe again. It suddenly sensed that a very serious attack was heading its anal cavity that was left unprotected by its defensive spell. It wanted to stop and move the back of its torso away from the approaching attack. And it had also set the action in motion to kick the ground by its hind legs to shift the location of its rear entry away from the incoming attack. But alas, it was too late for the beast. When the beast sensed the attack coming, Aaron's attack was already sure to land on its intended spot. The latter had an awkward expression as his plan to molest the beast almost came to fruition. Open Sesame. Chapter 244, Wretched Prank. Open Sesame. Aaron said out loud and couldn't help chuckling as the dicerus left was lodged right in the beast's anal cavity. The butcher didn't stop there. He first cancelled his blitz steps and executed the fire and lightning combo he had previously used. Fireball. Blitzbolt. Aaron didn't care about tweaking his fire element spell this time and executed it the way it should be. He would usually create the fireball at the tip of his weapon before releasing it towards his opponents. But Aaron could feel that the beast's cry this time was even more high-pitched than before. But it couldn't exactly blame the boar for that either. Since his weapon was inside the beast's anal cavity, Aaron couldn't see the fireball he had executed. Neither could he see Blitzbolt wreaking havoc inside the beast's body. But Aaron knew his strategy had paid off this time. Because the boar's body froze in its steps as soon as he detonated two of his most potent attacking spells inside it. The earth element beast was helpless when the lightning spell was executed inside its body. Its exoskeleton couldn't do a damn thing about it either. It only took a few moments for the beast's defensive spell to get dispersed. The exoskeleton crumpled down as the beast's body came out in the open again. The beast's eyeballs turned white and a dense volume of smoke came from its mouth. Its fur covering its entire body also stood straight for as long as the Blitzbolt was active inside its anal cavity. Aaron kept track of the beast's vital signs using his mana sense while he executed the combo spells inside the beast's stink box. Only after he was assured that the beast was dead did he stop his execution and retract Dicerus left from its lodged position. The beast's lifeless body fell on the ground as soon as Aaron stopped executing his spell and took his weapon out. His vision got clear and he could see his ranger and historian approaching him in haste. Aaron amusedly thought of something and threw Dicerus left towards Renita, who was now only a few meters away from him. Renita, here. Catch. Eek. The ranger cried in surprise and disgust as she got out of the weapon's trajectory as fast she could with her movement spell. She had seen what Aaron had done with that weapon. So it'd be a cold day in hell before she even came close with something like that tainted object, much less touch it. Bell had also seen Aaron lodging his weapon in the beast's anal cavity while he was being protected by Renita from a distance. But he couldn't see the butcher throwing his weapon towards them as he was running right behind the ranger. Bell's face was right in the middle of the weapon's trajectory. And the historian was caught unaware after seeing the tainted weapon flying towards him. His brain froze and he couldn't think of the right action to dodge the weapon or to catch it with his hands. Thankfully, Bell's luck wasn't too shitty. So when the weapon landed on his face, it was the weapon's hilt that made contact with his chin. That impact killed the weapon's speed and made it non-lethal. But the inertia was still strong enough for the weapon to finish its flip. The flat face of the weapon made contact with Bell's nose. Moments later, it fell to the ground. Bell understood what had happened to him. He could still feel the hilt making contact with his chin that had forced his head back a bit. And besides that, he could also feel the flat side of the blade making contact with his nose. The blade's edges were coated with the beast's blood. It didn't have any fecal residue over it. But that didn't stop the historian from imagining that there was indeed some beast poop mixed in that blood. His imagination was so strong that he could also smell the poop. Bell tilted forward and started vomiting after his imagination ran wild in his head. Right in front of him was Dicerus left, which he vomited over. The historian didn't stop until he threw out all that he had eaten when the team took its break before the battle. Bell only stopped tilting forward when he realized that there was nothing in his tummy that he could throw out anymore. Aaron and Renita were both approaching him. One with an awkward smile, the other with guilt written over her face. I'm sorry, Bell. I didn't know you wouldn't be able to dodge that accursed weapon. And that weapon landed right on. I should have known and made you aware. It's all Aaron's fault. Renita looked at Aaron with a scorned face. The latter maintained his awkward and laced with a tad bit of guilt smile and said while raising his open palms in surrender. I was just trying to test your presence of mind for the post-battle scenarios, you know. Sometimes you become most vulnerable when you step out of the battle, and that's the opportunity an enemy in the shadow might use to attack you. Renita passed the test. But Bell, let's say that you need to take that test again. He. Bell didn't have the strength in him to argue with Aaron. He wouldn't have done it anyway even if he had the energy to spare. He was rational enough to understand that Aaron's prank wasn't meant to harm anyone. So he just adjusted his glasses before drawing his handkerchief out to wipe his mouth. Aaron tried selling his bullshittery again. But he didn't find the buyer in Renita, who pointed a finger at him in accusation before replying with a voice of critique. You of all people shouldn't say anything about the presence of mind post-battle. Did you even realize that the team's battle with the group of boars wasn't over yet before you decided to pull this wretched stunt? Aaron heard Renita's valid accusation and scratched the back of his head before replying with a salesman's smile on his face. Don't worry about our team members. With the way they are right now, I'm sure they can handle the beasts of these levels just fine. However, they don't have to face a bunch of them. Renita wanted to rebut Aaron some more, but she didn't have any words to do so. In a way, this was the first time he had counted on his team members to do the jobs they were given. She couldn't find it in her to spoil this moment for herself or her team. Chapter 245, Raimi vs Deviant Mana Beast. This was the first time Aaron had shown confidence in his team members to do the jobs they were given. Renita couldn't find it in her to spoil this moment for herself or her team. Bell felt assured too when he heard Aaron's words of trusting his team members. I'm fine, Renita. And Aaron is right. White Raven can handle a mission of this caliber just fine. Take a look there yourself. Bell pointed to a particular direction, nudging his two team members to follow his finger and observe the battle happening in the distance. Thanks to their enhanced vision, the three F-rank LA students could see their mates engaging another boar. Raimi was paired up with Anna and Jake. Jake had been tasked with protecting Anna at all costs. She was the team's healer after all. Her safety was paramount. The tank's job was to make sure that she is protected while assisting Raimi. But it seemed that a certain someone didn't want the tank's help. Raimi was fired up for this mission. As soon as Aaron gave his team permission to continue, the knight bolted towards the incoming boar. But as the knight approached the boar without assistance from his teammates, the boar snorted and voiced his aggression that sounded like a war cry. One could say, the beast felt that the human was underestimating it by daring to be reckless. The beast activated its defensive spell when it was a few meters away from Raimi. It started donning its armor like exoskeleton as it ran. The process was smooth and instantaneous. In addition, the exoskeleton also had some runic patterns on it, unlike the armor that Aaron saw on the beat he had battled with. The runic patterns had faint luminescence of their own. It started exuding more light as the beast got more aggravated. The beast's evolution and rank up were closer than those of its peers. Therefore, it also had a shred of intelligence in it. The boar saw that Raimi had drawn his sword, which didn't feel normal to it. And it could feel through its connection with the earth and the earth element that Raimi's body resonated with a certain white noise-like sound that could affect its defensive spell. Yes, this beast was even more powerful than what Aaron had fought in every possible way. Plus, the beast had another inherent spell that it had unearthed from its genetic makeup. Raimi saw that the beast who was running towards him suddenly exaggeratedly raised its front legs and stomped them down heavily the next moment. This was another inherent spell of the F-rank Earth Suity, but it was rarely known for it. Big! The beast cried again as its front hooves stomped on the ground. And Raimi saw his vision change because of going off balance. The Earth Suity species would have to evolve to break into E-rank. The E-rank species was known as Greater Earth Suity. As compared to the Earth Suity, it was bigger, larger, and more ferocious. The Greater Earth Suity species could execute the defensive spell of the Earth Suity. It would generate rock-solid defensive armor around itself. As opposed to the Earth Suity, which would have a normal exoskeleton, the armor generated by the evolved species would have runic patterns on it. It was multiple times more resilient than the F-rank armor spell generated variant because of this very pattern. The F-rank defensive armor spell executed by the Earth Suity was referred to as Suity armor. And the armor spell used by the Greater Earth Suity was called Greater Suity armor. Mana beasts and demon beasts practiced the way of the elements differently. After evolution from its lower rank, the Greater Earth Suity would strengthen its affinity with the earth and earth element. so it would become more sensitive to anything that was connected to the earth. What's more, apart from the resilient defensive spell, the greater earth suity was also blessed with an offensive spell. It would raise its legs and stomp on the ground to execute a mini earthquake-inducing spell known as suity stomp. Normally, extra resilient armor and offensive spells were confined to greater earth suities of E rank. Earth suity would be able to access the power UPS only after evolution. But there were some rare exceptions. There were talented entities in the mana beasts and demon beasts too. They would tap into their genetic makeup early and discover the power UPS they would be granted after their evolution while still staying in the lower ranks. Such beasts were called deviant beasts. In most cases, deviant beasts were closer to their evolution into higher species. Like the case here. However, even if they were able to tap into the enhanced power UPS of their beast family, the power UPS themselves were restricted by the rank the beast held at the time. So the defensive armor the boar that was close to evolution into E rank had built around itself had greater defensive properties than its normal self. However, it still belonged to the F rank spell. It was a far cry from the original E rank spell the greater earth suity was known for. It was safe to assume that the beast that Raimi was going to battle with had armor that was stronger than usual. But it didn't cross the boundaries of the F rank. The same could be said about the beast's offensive spell. The spell's area of effect and its intensity were more restricted than the normal suity stomp. Still, this boar posed the most amount of danger than any of its peers. It was also in charge of the sounder. The reason it had zeroed in on Raimi was that it sensed the guy's sound vibrations through its connection with the earth. The knight was believed to present the greatest threat out of all the approaching enemies by the beast's instincts. So it rushed to tackle the man with the lisp. The beast's confidence in itself wasn't unfounded. Against the opponent is deemed the most dangerous for its earth element, it used its offensive spell most effectively, at the most effective time. Chapter 246, Hydro Whips. Coming back to Raimi's fight with the beast. The beast cried again as its front hooves stomped on the ground. And Raimi saw his vision change because of going off balance. This was because the beast's offensive spell had created a crater that had Raimi and it present at its center. The formation of the crater didn't affect Raimi to a large degree. What affected him the most was the quake that caused the crater. Raimi was about to regain his balance when the beast got close to him. It didn't give the knight a chance to attack. It took the initiative and attacked Raimi's torso with its tusks. Raimi's vision changed again as he was thrown in the air. Due to the blunt point of the beast's tusk landing on his chest out of the blue, he felt like vomiting. Thanks to the blunt tip of the tusk, it didn't impale Raimi, but only threw him off in the air. Otherwise, his condition would have been much more severe. Arg! Raimi cried in pain while he was in the air. The pain had moistened his eyes a bit. So he looked like he was going to cry soon. Damn it! This is not how I imagined my fight with this damn wild pork would be. Raimi thought to himself as he tried to find his balance before landing safely on the ground. But the beast wasn't willing to give him a chance. From the air, he could see the beast following the trajectory with which his body had been sent into the air. It would be waiting for Raimi when he landed on Earth from the looks of things. If that beast lands another blow on me, I'm fucked. Raimi thought as he tightened his grip on his sword that he was about to drop. He regretted not coordinating with Jake and Anna before he tried to solo the beast. You fucking moron. Why did you run off on your own? Hang the fuck on. Jake's voice could be heard in the distance. Raimi followed the direction of the sound and saw two whip-like streams of water approaching him at a rapid pace. The tank had already executed the newest spell in his arsenal that he had learned and mastered as soon as Raimi ran off on his own. He had a premonition that the hot-blooded guy on their team was about to create a mess somehow. Hydro whips. A ball of water was gathered behind Jake out of thin air. Jake sank his back and allowed it to come in contact with him, just above his tailbone. Surprisingly, the water didn't moisten Jake's clothes upon contact. Jake raised his right hand and two whips were formed from the ball of water behind Jake's back. He willed the water whips to travel in the direction of the now flying knight. The water whips harnessed themselves around Raimi's waist as soon as they made contact with him. Raimi felt a heavy tugging force as he was pulled towards where Anna and Jake were, breaking away from the trajectory his body was flying into. The beast realized that its prey was making an escape midair and snorted its nose loudly. Bairg. It sounded its signature war cry. The beast decided to change its tactics and attack the guy that was going to provide the haven for its prey. It raced towards the tank while the latter was busy pulling Raimi towards him with his water whips. Damn it! Look what you've done, Raimi. I'll have to work hard now. You better pay for my meals for a week to save your scrawny ass, you hear me? Jake yelled and raised his left hand in the direction of the boar and cast his defensive spell. Hydro Shield. Jake had changed his set of spells and the school of spells they belonged to under Aaron's guidance. His Yoyamikiki defensive spell would absorb mana from its surroundings to create a floating defensive shield. Jake's new spell based on a different school of spells, however, not only condensed the moisture from the surroundings but also created water by using his mana and the mana of the surrounding area. This school of spell had two advantages over the one Uyami Kilakia belonged from. First, the speed with which the execution would take place was much faster, almost instantaneous even. Second, it would stay effective even in environments that didn't have much moisture in the air. But with benefits came downsides too. This school of spells did not only use mana to condense moisture but also produce water. That's why the caster had to consume more mana. Plus, it required a lot more concentration from the caster's side to effectively execute and maintain the spell. This school of spells was troubling for Jake because he didn't like to work hard at all. He devoted all his stamina to his business endeavors. So the school of spell he had chosen for himself was the easiest for him to master and execute. But Aaron won't let his tank stay in mediocrity, for his own sake if not for his friends. He made Jake change his entire repertoire of spells, forcing him to tap into his fullest potential as a water element tank. Jake shouted and almost instantly formed a shield made out of almost solidified water before sending it towards the beast. The beast was caught off guard by the turn of events and stopped in its tracks after seeing the water shield flying towards him. But the beast soon got itself ready for the challenge ahead. It snorted, scratched the earth with its hooves, and charged towards the incoming shield. As if it had forgotten that it was a boar, pulling off a move bulls were known for. Chapter 247, Reverse Fortuitous Encounter. The beast soon got itself ready for the challenge ahead. It snorted, scratched the earth with its hooves, and charged towards the incoming shield. As if it had forgotten that it was a boar, pulling the move bulls were known for. The water shield flew towards it with incredible speed. The beast increased its speed to meet it head-on. They finally clashed with each other as the beast used its tusk to make contact with the surface of the shield. The beast's tusks were met with a large force of impact. The shield didn't let the tusk sink in even when it was made of water. It was as if the water had gained the properties of ice without turning into one. It was now the beast's turn to be thrown into the air. The shield followed the beast as if waiting for the beast to drop from the air and smash it again. Just like what it was planning to do with Raimi. Jake managed to retrieve the Sound Knight safely as the beast struggled with his water shield. Jake was sweating a bit when he pulled Raimi towards him hard and made his crash behind him, near Anna's feet. All while maintaining the defensive shield spell. Raimi, if you pull this stunt again, then I swear to all the money I hold dear that I'd let you get skewered by the beast's white tusk. Now get up and get patched up by Anna. Anna, please treat this buffoon as fast as you can. I'll not be able to hold the beast for much longer before running out of mana. Jake said without looking back. Raimi lay face down and butts up after crashing on the ground. He looked at Anna while maintaining that position and gave a pathetic smile as if to tell her everything was fine with him. The healer could tell that it was not. Raimi, we could have come up with a smart plan to tackle the beast, you know. Look at the state you are in right now. As Anna spread her mana sense, she began to analyze Raimi's condition. She also helped him straighten his awkward posture while doing it. She touched the spot where the beast's tusks had made contact with Raimi's torso after finding out there was something wrong with it using her mana sense. The latter winced in pain as soon as the healer placed her palm gently over it. AOE. Broken ribs and injury to the liver. This is going to take a while, Jackie. Raimi, calm your nerves and breathe easy. Since the tank protected her, Anna didn't need to worry about her safety or mobility. She cast a passive healing spell to start fixing Raimi up. Meanwhile, the beast was headbutting the water shield again for the fourth time. The shield had won all 3 rounds. But that didn't discourage the boar from trying its luck again. It was as if the beast was finding some sort of joy in getting itself injured with each collision. The beast's eyes seemed to have shined with intelligence as it approached the water shield again. But this time, instead of using its tusks, the F-rank boar decided to try something else. It raised its front legs, in the same manner it had when launching the Suity Stomp spell. But instead of stomping on the ground, the beast decided to change the target to the shield's surface. The beast's front hooves landed right on the shield's front side. This time the shield's surface produced countless ripples while the shield itself started shaking uncontrollably. Guys, this exotic pork is up to something. You might wanna hurry up. Jake warned his teammates behind him in a grim voice. He was trying to maintain the execution of his defense spell for as long as he could. But it looked like the spell was going to get broken by the sheer tenacity of the beast. Anna expedited her healing process by inefficiently increasing her mana expenditure. It was a desperate move, but it had to be made. Raimi cursed himself for acting impatiently at the beginning and tightened his grip around the hilt of his sword. This time he was planning to coordinate with Jake and slay the wild pork. He was even thinking of making skewered patties out of the beast meat just to have his revenge. The boar managed to stop the shield from advancing on him. But it seemed that the nose snorter wasn't happy with the tie. So the exotic pork snorted its nose again and echoed its beastly cry before pulling off the same move again on the shield. this time with even more ferocity than before. That managed to work in its favor as the shield was broken before the water got dispersed in the surrounding area. Some of the water droplets that were dispersed in the air reflected the sunlight after it fell on them and created rainbow-like light play around the beast. A simple boar managed to look majestic because of the feat it had achieved. But Jake felt that the light reflection wasn't the only thing that was making the beast look majestic. There were uncalled for mana fluctuations in the surrounding area that raised alarm in his mind. Damn it! This battle ended up being a fortuitous encounter for this exotic pork. Raimi, hurry the fuck up. The damn beast is trying to achieve a breakthrough into the E rank. Raimi stood up from his seated position after he heard Jake's warning. He knew when to take things lightly. And he also knew when to get serious. His presence of mind told him he had to act fast or the beast was about to become a serious nuisance for all of them. Jackie, support me with yo hydwo whips. Keep the beast tied at the place for a while. I'm going ahead. Raimi informed Jake this time and ran past him towards the evolving beast. He had to kill the menace in front of him quickly. Chapter 248, Power of Team Play. Jake's mana storage was soon going to run out of mana. So he didn't try to execute the water shield again. He knew the boar's attention would be on Raimi now that he was leading the charge. So the tank wasn't worried about his or the healer's safety anymore. Jake then executed his hydro whips again. There were around 6 whips now. The tank raised his hands and sent them to follow Raimi. Raimi could now see the 6 whips following him, 3 on either side. This bolstered his confidence and allowed him to realize his full potential. Surreal Sound Swords. Raimi shouted the name of his spell in his mind to aid him in concentrating on its execution. Raimi remembered Aaron's words that he had said casually but left a lasting impression on Raimi's psyche. Only now did he truly understand what his idol had been trying to say all along. Moderately strong people who try to solo fight their opponents and injure themselves when they could have received help from their teammates are not only stupid but also a nuisance to those around them. I'd rather have a weak ranker with me who knows his or her role in the team and acts efficiently on it. This is in contrast to someone who is talented but doesn't want to contribute to team play. Soloing an opponent only looks cool when you can do it effortlessly. It is pathetic to not rely on your team's strength only to suffer miserably while trying to fight all by yourself. It's fine if someone doesn't want to value their life. But why should I let them jeopardize my safety by making them part of my team? Aaron had said that to Becky while she was trying to argue with him over her role as a mage. She wanted to prioritize team plays that would allow her to cast her AoEs more. The butcher refused, of course. He wasn't naive enough to think that AoEs were the one-mold-fits-all answer to all the problems a teammate of various rankers would face. He had made that speech to straighten her thinking. Becky just humped for an answer. It wasn't clear if she would follow Aaron's words. The latter's words, however, were understood by another listener at this moment. Damn it! I hope Lord Aaron doesn't get angry with me for my earlier actions. I'm already a reserve member of the team. He'd kick me out if I gave him an excuse to do so. Raimi thought as he ran towards his opponent who was trying to break into E rank. He finished his silent incantation as he got the boar within his spell's execution range. Surreal Sound Swords. The sword Raimi held in his hand started shaking with an inaudible sound frequency. There were also a bunch of sound swords forming around him as he approached the beast. Go forth, my babies. Raimi willed his swords to attack the beast and interrupt its evolution process. The now formed levitating swords flew with exceptional speed and collided against the torso of the beast. It seemed that the beast didn't target Raimi for no reason. Earth Suidi's defensive spells were crippled by sound element spells. Upon colliding with the exoskeleton of the beast, the sound swords sent the sound waves they contained into the exoskeleton as soon as they collided. Jake could see that as soon as the sound swords hit the beast's defensive spell, the runic pattern over it got dimmer with each hit until there was none. But irk. The beast also produced a cry that was laced in pain and surprise. The pain was because one of the sound swords Raimi had sent towards it had managed to hit the area that was already hit by the sound sword before it. The weak defense was breached by the impact of the next incoming sword, forcing the beast to suffer its first injury. But Raimi didn't let his guard down this time. He sent another volley of sound swords towards the beast and shattered its defensive spell. But the deviant mana beast still had another card in its sleeve that it could use if Raimi approaches it carelessly like before. That's why he signaled Jake with hands and the latter understood what he was referring to. Immediately after Raimi's surreal sound swords had made their presence felt, the water whips rushed to tackle the beast. The beast was still pretty shaken up and in a vulnerable state. So it couldn't dodge and get away from the incoming water whips. 4 of the water whips were tied to the 4 limbs of the beast each. The second last whip was turned into a farce before it tightened around the boar's neck. The remaining water whip was there to hurl a certain someone at the beast. Raimi was suddenly seen flying towards the now injured and about to evolve beast. He found himself right above the beast's neck while in the air. Surreal Sound Sword. At this time, the boar was tied to its place by Jake's water whips, making it unable to execute its offensive spell. Its defensive spell was also broken by Raimi's sound element spell. Raimi executed his got to spell. He imbued his sword with ultra-high sound frequency before swinging at the beast's neck. His eyes gleamed with cold determination as he let his sound-powered sword do its work. The knight was confident that even though the beast was tenacious, it wouldn't be able to harm him or his team if it was decapitated. And he was right. The beast's body collapsed on the ground with a distinct thud as its head flew towards the front. With the power of team play and flawless personal spell execution, Raimi had slain the about-to-evolve F-rank beast in mere moments after his recovery. Chapter 249, Blue Fire Domain. With the backing of team play and flawless personal spell execution, Raimi had slain the about-to-evolve F-rank beast in mere moments after his recovery. Wasn't that too easy? Why would we scout of this wild pauk when we could cut him this easily? Raimi landed on the ground and observed the beast's headless torso before commenting. Anna and Jake followed him soon after. The tank heard the knight's opinion and shook his head before making him realize the obvious truth. The pauk wasn't easy to kill. It wouldn't have let you execute the spell that easily if I hadn't tied it down. That's why I said we should have done this from the beginning. Plus, I can see that your elemental spell was the bane of the beast's earth element defensive spell. That's the biggest baddie and the sounder headed our way, I guess. You are a trouble magnet, Raimi. There's no two-way about it. Haha. Raimi heard this only focusing on the last part Jake had said about him. He started arguing with the tank then and there while Anna was looking at them with a range of emotions making a commotion in her head. She felt a bit guilty that she couldn't help the duo fighting the beast. But she then told herself that her job as a healer was to assure her safety first and help her injured members if and when the need arises. This is what she accomplished on this mission. Anna was also impressed by how Raimi had bounced back from his failure and faced the beast again without any hesitation in his stance. She wasn't sure she could do that if she were in his shoes. The healer thought that she would surely have cold feet after getting injured by the beast the way Raimi had been. The team's tank, Jake, was equally impressive in her eyes. He had done nothing particularly impressive or over the top during the mission. But he had straightened up Raimi and supported him splendidly. Jake's strongest suit was his people skills and ability to make rational decisions despite any form of stress. Anna hoped that she as a healer would be equally talented as her teammates in the future. She thanked Aaron in the mind for guiding her and allowing her the opportunity to become a part of this team when she was nobody, a rankless LA student. Another bunch of boars headed the group's way while Raimi and Jake were arguing. The adult boars had seen Raimi effortlessly take care of their leader. The Earth Suidi was a one-track and revenge-driven species. The adult bears were not merely punishing the intruders for their transgressions. Additionally, they realized Raimi shouldn't be given the leeway to catch him at any cost. Their young would be slaughtered without a chance to fight back. When they saw another group of bears heading their way, they stopped fighting and prepared for battle. By now, Anna, Jake, and Raimi had found their rhythm and knew what to do. So their next battle strategy was formed without them exchanging their words. No matter how cautious and alert the boars tried to be while fighting Raimi, they still ended up underestimating him. The latter also had realized that taking help from Jake worked in his favor. So he didn't hesitate to coordinate with the team's healer from the get-go. Needless to say, the trio took care of another bunch of boars after fighting with them for a while. Raimi did not have any serious injuries on him this time. So Anna didn't have to do much. And she was happy about it. Becky was given free rein to tackle the direction she was assigned to. She was a mage with AoE spells after all. Her job was to engage the bunch of boars heading her way without damaging the tusks their mission had asked them to collect. I must have been given this role because I had once asked Aaron to let me use my AoEs in my way. Damn it, the guy holds a grudge. Becky thought while seeing a group of boars charging towards her. They snorted their noses in unison, making their nostril-driven war cries reach her ears first. Becky raised her hand and drew a series of concentric mana circles in the air with the movements of her fingers acting as the brush strokes. Her school of spells required her to make such spectral runic circles in the void before she could cast the spells. Becky saw that the group of beasts had entered the range of her AoEs. She smiled and touched the innermost circle of the spectral rune in front of her before making a rotating action. Blue Fire Domain. Becky cursed herself for opening her mouth to often argue with Aaron after hearing his battle plan for the Spisank mission. But it was not like she enjoyed doing it. There was something about the guy that would just tick her off. She would argue with Aaron all the time, yes. But she would also ponder over why she argued with him at the end of the day. Because Aaron would always manage to come on top every time she did. Her elemental affinity and inherent nature had granted her unique ability. The ability to sense the coldness of a ranker's aura. And she had sensed that out of all the rankers she had met in her life, Aaron's aura was the coldest. Becky's spells could be considered as unique as the combination of her affinity and inherent nature. Her hybrid elemental affinity was fire, which was considered a normal affinity. But her inherent nature was the coldness, which had given her spell-generated fire a unique effect. her fire would burn blue. And instead of scorching things, the fire would absorb all the heat from its targets, practically freezing them after their regular temperatures were brought down forcefully. Chapter 250, Cold Haze. Becky had two AoEs in her repertoire, Domain of Blue Fire and Cold Haze. She could only execute them when there were no allies around in the spell's ranger. That's why Becky wanted Erin to prioritize her AoE execution before any of her teammates started with their moves. She couldn't control her AoEs the way she wanted to. She couldn't make her spell exclude her teammates and only affect the team's opponents. So instead of trying to control what she couldn't, Becky wanted the team to start with her spell. In a way, her thinking was not wrong. She wanted to cast her AoEs with peace of mind. Then she would retreat from the front line and let her teammates take care of the remaining targets that survived her spell. But the Butcher was thinking long-term. He had asked her to learn to control her AoEs. With her AoEs, it was possible. She was just lacking the motivation to do so. So Erin gave her just that. He started suppressing her AoE executions under the pretext that his teammates' battle styles weren't able to accommodate her AoE executions. He also gave a reason that her spells would be used as a backup plan if and when things start turning sour for the team. All the members of the team would retreat to the backline during crunch time and her AoEs would be used for Erin and the rest to catch a breather mid-battle. As Erin demonstrated to Becky, they both can play the game of making battle strategies tailored to their tastes without caring about others. He came up with a plan that was as right as hers without treating her AoEs as opening salvos. Meanwhile, Erin also told Becky that if she could optimally control her AoEs so that they won't harm the teammates, then she could cast them almost any time she saw fit. With this subtle suppression, he had given her the motivation she needed to work on her control. Now she just needed to act on that motivation. But instead of getting riled up, Becky procrastinated. The procrastination led to dissatisfaction, which in turn became the reason behind her sour mood every time Erin said something. Erin eventually figured out the reason behind why Becky was trying to pick a fight with him. But he just smiled in his head and carried on doing what he had planned, ignoring the teen's tantrums. So when the chance to showcase her prowess was given to her, Becky decided to let it all out and release all her frustration. Becky executed her AoE as soon as the beast group got into the spell's range. The ground beneath her had gotten covered in sky blue flames which started spreading in all directions. They covered the position the beasts were in while running. And only then did the flames stop spreading. When the flames touched the boar's hooves, they began to climb on them as if they were searching for food. Praise that radiated body heat. The flames didn't burn the beast's skin. But the beasts felt like their hibernation period had suddenly sneaked upon them. Their bodies' temperatures dropped at an alarming rate. As a result, the beasts couldn't help but slow down their advance. The sky blue flames started showing a darker shade of blue as they absorbed the body heat of the beasts. The flames seemed even hungrier and started to absorb more of what they craved. As if these flames were intoxicated by the warmth of their targets. Almost no beast could fight off the sudden lethargy felt by them because of the blue flames. They stopped in their tracks as their bodies started turning stiff because of the thin layer of ice formed over their skin. The spell did not cast ice. It was the surrounding moisture getting condensed on the beasts' bodies that had eventually turned into the thin layer of ice after whatever minuscule heat was drained from it. Becky felt glad that her AoE was working fine mid-battle just the way she wanted to. She had subconsciously feared that whatever bare minimum control she had over her spell would have been lost because of Erin's suppression of not letting her use it during their ranking battles. But soon she got tense after seeing that two beasts from the group were still approaching her. Becky was sent alone in this direction. She didn't have her usual tank protection acting as a net to fall back on. She knew Erin was trying to push her over the edge with a formation like this. Becky sighed and made a fist of determination with her hands. If Erin wanted to force the best mage dormant in her, she would just show him that what she had right now was still enough to make him listen to her. Becky maintained the blue fire domain's runic circle with her right hand to keep the spell active. And with her left hand, she started drawing another runic circle in the void. Cold Haze. Becky executed another of her AoE. She had practiced hard at stacking her AoEs. It wasn't easy to stack spells in the F rank. And it became even more difficult to combine something like two AoEs. These few months of rigorous training were fruitful for her. As a result of her spell stacking, Becky started sweating lightly. She had the wild thought of cooling herself down with her flames too. But too bad, her body as a source of the flames was immune to the spell's effect. The school of spell had been designed as such after all. The effects of Cold Haze paired up well with the blue fire domain. Instead of using the flames as a medium to absorb the heat, this AoE would use air to absorb the warmth from the surroundings. The two beasts that were slowly but surely approaching the mage felt that their lungs had been filled with ice. The monolayer that had protected their bodies from external harm was already weakened by Becky's first spell. So when she executed her second AoE, the boars didn't have a way to fight back. The two boars in the lead along with their mates behind them froze to death when Becky was done with them. Notably, the boars in the lead were only a few steps away from their now panting target when they lost their lives. Chapter 251, Bonus: The Legend of the Boar Berserker 01. The boars in the lead were only a few steps away from their now panting target when they lost their lives. Becky had overexerted herself while running stacked AoEs. She could have used normal spells to take care of both the boars that were approaching her. That would have been a more mono-efficient choice. But the mage wanted to show off a bit. She wanted Aaron and everyone in the team to see her in a better light. Subconsciously, she hoped Steve, Renita, and the rest to pay her the same amount of respect they did to Aaron. Ha! I hope that guy saw what I have done here and will let me cast my spells more from now on. Becky thought and sat down on the ground that had been covered with blue fire, which was diminishing with each passing moment. The boars' stiff bodies plopped one after the other. I wonder how Steve is doing. Becky thought and looked in another direction, which was assigned to the team's official berserker. Earth Armor. Steve yelled out the name of his spell as he saw a group of Earth Suidi approaching him. For some reason, he was excited. He felt like these boars and he were so much alike. First, they had the same elemental affinity. Second, their spells also made them use their element to form armors around their bodies, just like him. Lastly, these beasts represented the path of a berserker at its core, controlled aggressiveness and undying tenacity to win over their opponents at any cost. Steve had decided that he would work hard and take up any solo Berserk missions he could find and complete them in his free time. With enough merps, he can buy the beast contract spell Aaron was using and form a contract with one of these Earth Suidi one day. Steve was left to man this alone by Aaron. He had realized that the butcher showed confidence in his ability to handle the beast by doing this. So he didn't want things to end on a disappointing note. Steve also realized that Aaron had done this due to the similar elemental affinity and defensive spells he and the beast shared. It would be easy for the berserker to stall for time with his defensive spell. Steve's teammates could then help him deal with the beasts assigned to him after they had handled their share of boars. But the berserker in him knew this was his platform to truly test the mettle of his earth element spells. He rushed to the battlefield as soon as he saw his opponent. Steve's limbs started getting covered in earth element armor soon after he finished executing his defensive spell. Then he used his multi-use spell to launch himself in the air. Earth Spike. As Steve was running towards his opponents, an earthen pillar-like spike of 12 feet appeared immediately under his right foot. The speed of the earthen spike formation was so abrupt that it launched the berserker into the air. Steve had adjusted the orientation of the spike's formation so that he would be launched forwards towards his approaching enemies. He flew in the air at an incredible speed. His black hair was blown back as it was pushed by the wind pressure. Steve didn't mind his hair getting messed up. His heart was beating at a rapid pace when he saw the beast's hateful gazes following him as he flew towards them. Ha ha ha. Take this, spike armor. Steve combined his two spells and created a combo attack. His earthen armored limbs suddenly grew spikes over their outer surfaces. The berserker's flying trajectory began to descend in altitude as soon as he was ready with his combo. Betrayal. One of the boars cried in pain as soon as Steve's punch landed on its head, near its eyes. It had executed its defensive spell. But just like in Aaron's case, it failed to protect the beast's eyes. And that became the spell's bane as one of Steve's earthen spikes lodged itself in the beast's eye socket. The beast was still not dealt with, however. It tried to shake off its enemy by making exaggerated and wild moves. Steve felt like he was riding a wild bull in a drunken haze. But the berserker knew what to do. His grip on the beast was soon about to be lost. And the beast still could see with its other eye, which remained fine even after his attack. Steve decided to change that. He punched at the beast's remaining working eye with his spiked armor hand, while he was still on the beast's head. The beast cried in pain again and tried to shake Steve off its head with even more vigorous moves. Steve decided to use the now blind beast against its peers. He used his hands that had their spikes lodged in the beast's eyes and pulled them towards himself. It was the beast's subconscious way of diverting the pain it felt. Perfect. I can make use of this pork patty to take care of another of its kind. Steve thought and yanked his hands in another direction, towards a particular area. An area that was crowded with the other beasts in the group that were trying to observe the weird battle. Earth Suidi would never harm another of their kind. And their enemy was currently riding one of their members. So they could only watch from the sidelines while making their dissatisfaction and anger towards their enemy known to him with their loud snorts. But soon those snorting noises of anger turned into the snorts of panic and alarm. They saw Steve leading a blind member of their group toward them with threatening momentum. Blayarg. Blurg. Bluer. The beasts tried to warn their blind members of their current position. But the beast was too much in pain and misery to listen to its peers' calls. So the boars that were waiting on the sidelines could only do one thing to get out of the situation. Too bad for the beasts, Steve had predicted their retreat and prepared countermeasures. Chapter 252, The Legend of the Boar Berserker 02. Too bad for the beasts, Steve had predicted their retreat and prepared countermeasures. He cast a stacked earth spike spell and made a series of spikes appear behind the beasts, blocking their retreat. The beasts tried to run away by turning back. But they soon saw the crescent-shaped series of 12 feet earthen spikes blocking their escape from all directions. They were boxed in. Choo-choo, you sons of bitches. Haha. Steve said and directed the boar he was riding on onto the one that he guessed was the most dangerous among the beasts waiting on the sidelines. He stepped right foot onto the blind beast's head and pressed down hard while removing his spikes from its eye sockets. The berserker jumped in the air using the beast's head as a stepping platform. The beast's head tilted downwards because of Steve's jump. Its tusks were pointed right at the beast which was in front of it. The beast was busy trying to headbutt the spikes that had suddenly appeared and blocked its path. Using its tusk, it tried to destroy the obstacle. But then it heard its peers' commotion and it turned back. The sight of the bling beast charging forth with its tusks pointed outwards was waiting for it. The beast tried to use its tusk as well to deflect the blow heading towards it. But alas, it was already too late. The blind beast's tusks rammed right into the trapped beast's frontal torso after the two sets of tusks intermingled. The momentum of the blind beast was already too much for either of the beasts to come out unscathed. But the blind beast's tusks made the situation even direr. The tusks first pushed the trapped beast backwards until it touched the spike that was located behind it. The tusk's blunt force was enough for the trapped beast to feel pain despite its earthen armor spell. The force of the blunt impact penetrated the beast's armor and broke a few of its rib bones. The beast cried in agony. But this resulted from the blunt force of the tusks. The blind beast's momentum hadn't been zeroed out yet. Its tusks pressed hard on the trapped beast's frontal torso and started cracking because it couldn't break the trapped beast's armor. The beast was already touching the spike from its rear end. In response to the blunt force of equal magnitude, but of opposing victor, the tusks of the blind beast were cracked and were about to snap. But the first to show cracks were not the beast's white tusks. It was the trapped beast's defensive spell that had broken first after its collision with the blind beast's tusks. The internal injury the former had suffered because of the latter's sudden collision was enough for the injured beast to dispel its armor. The blind beast's tusks were digging into the flesh of the trapped beast now as a result of the armor spell getting dispersed. The latter's tusks which were pointed upwards now hit the former as well because of the sheer collision force. The two beasts crashed heavily onto the spike that was strategically placed behind them. Damn it! Their tusks are cracked on their surfaces. Hope Aaron and Bazank don't mind them too much. Steve thought and cursed himself for pulling a stunt like this. It might look like the battle lasted quite a while. But in reality, only a few moments had passed. Steve watched the whole event from the air and regretted his reckless actions. Every set of tusks provided a substantial amount of merps for LA students. Steve was sure a miser like Aaron would critique him and his actions. He thought this would end when he found out about what happened to not one but two of the boar's sets of tusks. Worst case, Aaron would take a huge cut from his share of the mission as a form of compensation. But the deed was already done. There was no benefit to be gained by crying over spilt milk. Steve could pull the same stunt again by targeting his next target the same way. But this time, he valued his potentially dwindling merp's share more and decided to engage with the beasts in one of the most primal ways possible: punching. The berserker retrieved his vial of berserker potion and drank it just before he landed on the ground. He threw the vial down and broke it before wiping the residual potion off of his lips. Steve bolted towards the beast nearest to him as he felt the berserking potion's effects kicking in. His earth armor spell gained even more toughness and durability as a result. Bam! He avoided the beast's attack on time and punched it right in the torso from the side. The latter was pushed in the opposite direction because of that seemingly uncalled for punch. Steve had seen firsthand how the right amount of blunt force could allow it to breach the defensive spells. So he didn't hold back and started exerting more force in his technique-driven punches. The other two boars wanted to intervene. But every time they tried, a bunch of spikes would get in between their charge. Steve handled the multiple beasts excellently with his mid-range earth spike spell backing his play. He used them to retreat in the air where the beasts couldn't touch him. The White Raven's official berserker was on autopilot as he fought with the beasts. When he was done, the last of the three beasts had its defensive spell dispersed and it's now out in the open body covered in blunt force injuries. This time Steve had made sure that the beast's tusks were unharmed during his battle. With the last potential threat dropping on the ground, the White Raven crew's first mission was technically over. It only needed a cleanup now. And a post-mission pork feast to celebrate the team's feat was also due. Chapter 253, Prattling and Pork Chops. Chapter 253, Prattling and Pork Chops. Ewan, you were awesome as usual. You took care of that boa, in what like a minute, right? Sigh, we weren't so lucky. It's all Jake's fault. White Raven crew was having dinner in the beast's sanctuary. There were huge chunks of pork roasting over a couple of campfires. The pieces roasted before the current ones were already served to the members. The group was discussing its mission's highlights while enjoying a delicious meal and root beers. They drank root beer instead of potion like ranked ales because they wanted to keep their heads straight in the middle of the forest. Listen here, you little shit. It was you who bolted towards the wild pork as soon as you got a glimpse of it. You'd be seriously injured if not dead if it wasn't for me or Anna. Not only do you not thank us, but you also want to blame your mistakes on us? Steve, let's beat this guy's ass up. Raimi tried to pin the blame on his team, almost letting the F-rank beast evolve into a full-blown menace on Jake. But Raimi's bullshit was too much for the tank. Thus, he proposed to Steve that he help him beat the team's Sound Knight. Oh, Jackie, you got that wrong. I'm and will always be thankful to Anna. She has helped me a lot in this mission. It was a Sotain tank in a squad that didn't offer me support when it was needed when I first launched my attack. We would have been done with the hunt sooner if it wasn't for that small instance of uncooperativeness. Jake's face turned red in anger when he heard Raimi's blatant lies. He felt that the guy was becoming more and more like Aaron in the art of bullshittery after following the latter's footsteps. However, unlike Aaron's manipulative style, the Sound Knight's talk was aggravating to listen to. Jake was going to get up from his seated position on the ground and grab Raimi up by the collar. But Aaron spoke up before he had a chance to act on his intentions. Jake, don't get your balls busted over Raimi's talks. I was looking at all your battles from my position. I must say, I'm impressed. The progress you have made over the past few months is exceptional. Raimi, I hope you don't need me to tell you that you started with a reckless move and jeopardized the safety of your squad. Aaron said until here and then paused to observe Raimi's expression. The guy seemed guilty after being called out for his mistakes. His earlier instance of blaming Jake must have been his way to lighten the mood. The butcher thought to himself and continued. But give credits when credits are due. You bounced back from your mistake pretty well. And handled that about to evolve boar excellently. Naturally, your element has a huge advantage over the boars. But the elemental spells the rankers use are a part of their individualities. So their strengths and weaknesses are carried by the rankers themselves. And so are the credits when they get efficiently used by them. Aaron looked over at Becky and spoke up. Becky, you did well. The butcher concluded his comment on the team mage in just 4 words. Becky was infuriated in her mind after she heard Aaron's concise response. She knew he was doing this on purpose. Almost everyone in the team appreciated her AoE stacking, which she displayed splendidly in the mission. Except for the team's shadow leader himself. Steve, the stunt you pulled back then has cost us a sizable chunk of MERPs. The appropriate amount of cut will have to be taken from your share of the mission rewards. I fucking knew it. Aaron would even ask hookers for their money for sleeping with them. Steve sighed and nodded at Aaron's decision. It's not like he had much of a choice anyway. But he heard the guy talk more about him. Regardless of what we do with the damaged tusks, you handled the task with the proper amount of bravery and intelligence. As I said before, a berserker needn't be mindless when entering the berserk state. As for the question you asked me, if you want to form a beast contract with Earth Suity, I'd say go ahead. The beast is a good match for someone like you who is a berserker and a user of the earth element. And if you want to borrow MERPs to get the beast contract spell, hee. You know whom to ask. Aaron said and wolfed down another piece of pork chop. The whole team was now accustomed to the butcher's appetite, so they only paid attention to his words and not his actions while he was speaking to them. I'd rather commit a robbery, get the thing I want, and get punished for it than to ask you for another loan. Steve snorted after thinking like that. At least the chances of him escaping the consequences of the robbery were slim, but not zero. But Aaron's loans were a debt trap. Aaron understood what Steve was thinking and told him that the loan amount would incur 0 interest. After all, the spell was meant to power both the team's berserker and the whole team by extension. White Raven's team members were all shocked when Aaron let go of his claims of interest. Since all these months they had known him, this was one of the rare few times the butcher had shown them a slight bit of leniency. Steve was put in a daze by Aaron's offer. He was shaken up hard by Becky, who then whispered in his ears that this might probably be Aaron's last form of monetary help towards his team. So he has to take the butcher up on his offer. Steve agreed to Aaron's help immediately. The latter verbally marched forward after concluding on the berserker's issue. Speaking of spells. Jackie, your Hydro Whip spell is working so much better for you than I had expected. You need to keep on practicing the spell until you can get absolute control over the whips. Belle and Anna are effective in terms of their non-combat roles. But you guys need to work on developing your combat potential. Anywho. You need to take up more missions like these in the coming days. I'll be gone for a few days. So rake in as many MERPs as you can. We are going to need them in the future. Aaron said that after having his last pork chop for the day. He was content with the amount of food he had and his team's battle results so far. Now it was time to take care of some of his pending tasks. Chapter 254, Blackmail. Arizi Hannah Agnoth could be seen in her study, looking through some administrative documents. She had worn a simple and elegant white dress that highlighted her moderate curves. Her waist-length hair was not tied, so the morning breeze that would enter through the wide window would caress her hair lightly and make its presence known. She was about to wrap up her paperwork and get ready to start her regular petrol duties for the day. But her usual routine was hit by a pause when she received a sealed scroll from one of the subordinates under her. The scroll was sealed by a runic line, so she had to imbue it with her magic to get it unsealed. Meet me at Galvin Cliff, just before the day sets in. The scroll only had these 11 words written inside it. But just before she could throw the scroll down, thinking that it was from one of her admirers trying to confess to her most mysteriously, the mana she had imbued in the scroll came together and formed another set of words. I know you work for the cultists. The words disappeared along with the dissipating mana, and the scroll contained only those 11 words again. Arizi Hannah had a mini heart attack after reading those words. She clutched the scroll in her hand tightly and started thinking about who the person that had sent the scroll could be. Damn it! I took every precaution I could, but it still leaked out. It might not have been my fault though. Those damn Beast Bloods lunatics can't keep their mouths shut. If the beans have been spilled, it must be from their end. Ari concluded and fumed inside her head. But there was another point to consider that she had forgotten to register before. This person didn't rat me out to the city administration. That means they are either playing a guessing game with no conclusive proof, or whatever they have on me isn't solid. No. Wait, Ari. There's a third possibility. They know that it's you for sure and want to use it as leverage. Blackmail. Ari's grim face turned grim after she thought about the third possibility. She immediately got up and walked to her castle's basement. There was an encrypted communication array placed there which she would use occasionally to communicate with someone close to her who also happened to be a cultist. Sigh. Ma chérie, I remember telling you not to contact me during these days. I have been a bit busy, you see. Anyway, miss me already? Hee hee. A life-sized, flickering spectral image could be seen getting projected over the eye of the array that was located in Ari's castle basement. The words were spoken by this very spectral shadow that initially expressed displeasure at being contacted by Ari. But later on, the spectral shadow seemed to have been glad that the latter had contacted her. One could say that the person this spectral shadow belonged to was very moody and fickle. Ha! I'm not here to soothe your ego, May. This is serious. Remember the talk we had a few weeks ago? It has come to pass. Someone is trying to blackmail me today. I hope you can guess what they are planning to use against me. Ari said this with a stoic face while folding her hands. She wasn't interested in the usual romance that would take place every time she called the spectral shadow. The soup she had found herself in demanded serious attention not only from her but also from May after all. Say what now? And wait, do you think it was because of us? May asked after getting shocked by the news Ari provided her. The spectral shadow pondered for a while before coming up with words to respond. You are right. Maybe it was us. The lower ranks shouldn't know your involvement with us. And the higher ranked entities just don't care about you or me. Does that mean it is someone from the Beast Blood's middle order? Damn it, I can't be sure. The spectral shadow agreed to Ari's indirect way of saying all of it was Beast Blood's fault. But it couldn't just zero in on a single person from a large pool of suspects. So it asked Ari about the recent turn of Eve. But surprisingly, it was Ari who gave the spectral shadow another reason to worry about. Have you considered another possibility? That it's neither a slip-up from my end or your end but a third party all along. May grew quiet after listening to another of Ari's concerns. The spectral image stopped flickering and revealed the person's real identity it belonged to. This person happened to be a beautiful half-elf woman in her late 20s. May asked Ari all the details she could think of about today's events. The latter told her about how she received a sealed scroll. She also showed the scroll to her along with the content it had. The sentence that describes your association dissipated into mana after you read it. Someone is trying to keep your association with the cultists intact. That's a good and bad thing at the same time. Good because your identity would stay a secret in their hands as long as you did what they asked, because we're not dealing with an amateur ex-Beast Bloods member like I thought we were. Sigh. We won't gain anything from the scroll. It's an expensive E-rank scroll, so we know the person who used it is at least an E-ranker. But that's all there is to it. The scroll itself is easy to get. We can't find shit through tracking the source of this document. Ari stopped tapping her fingers on her folded arms as an act of impatience and voiced her displeasure. Duh. I know that already, May. I'm asking you what I should do now. Ari asked and started tapping her fingers again. She was trying to act impatient and angry. But May could understand that was just a defense mechanism to hide her fears. The establishments were never known for their forgiveness towards cultists or someone who was proven to be linked to them. This held especially true for someone like Ari, who was leading a battalion of city guards for the city of Silvermoon. It could be said that Ari had not lost her head in a panic if she was still acting this normal. May thought that and sighed before answering Ari's question. What can we do anyway? Let's see who this fella is first. We'll think of something after your meeting with this blackmailer takes place. And Ari, if you find that they are alone and the information they have on you is doubtful at best, then you know what to do. Ari placed her right hand on the hilt of her sword hanging by the waist after hearing May's response. A killer intent suddenly emanated from her serious stance. She concluded May's line of thoughts in her head. Kill them. Chapter 255, Sticking to the Script. Nice to meet you, Miss Arizi Hannah Agnoth. How was your day? Ari was greeted by a deep and raspy voice when she reached the destination mentioned by the scroll. She maintained her silence and focused on the two people that were present in her vision. A tall, dark, and broad-shouldered man could be seen standing at the precipice of the Galvin Cliff. He was looking at the setting sun and moving clouds with a look of keen interest. He had spoken to her without looking at her as if the mundane part of nature was more significant in his eyes than her. A petite young lady could also be seen standing near him with her head looking downwards, giving off the impression that she was his attendant. Standing near the tall man with his heavy presence, her appearance seemed unimportant. Both the man and the young lady had worn masks with weird and eye-catching embroidery imprinted on them. It was the same kind of mask a well-known rogue named Tumco Derrida from different parts of Edinburgh was known to be wearing. People could tell from one look that the petite lady was the broad-shouldered man's subordinate. But that would be the case if they only consider what was visually unfolded in front of them. Scanning their presences with Mana sense would tell a different story though. Surprisingly, the man was an F-ranker despite his heavy presence. And the young lady who looked to be inconsequential was a C-rank entity. Arizi Hannah was quite surprised by the contradiction. But what surprised her, even more, was the fact that both the lady and the man had convoluted Mana senses. Arizi Hannah thought the duo was using an artifact. She tried to probe further with her Mana sense but she was literally and metaphorically stopped in her tracks. The young lady lifted her face and looked the Agnoth scion in the eyes. The young lady had elegant facial features. Her eyes were deep blue and had a certain charm in them. But when she looked at the approaching Arizi Hannah, the latter got a different message in her psyche. This is a warning. Ari thought and retracted her Mana sense. She was only in the vapor phase of D rank after all. That too with a potion-induced breakthrough. She will have to wait a while for her rank to stabilize and for her to advance. So a warning from a C-rank entity wasn't something she could take lightly. Ari was thinking of silencing her blackmailer forever if she could confirm that the leak wasn't spread further. But the presence of the C-rank entity made her abandon that plan. The scion of Agnoth stood a few meters away from the group. The man had already made an opening statement. He didn't seem interested in speaking again. Arizi Hannah played the mind game by refusing to answer his question. But her indirect method seemed to have been in vain. Because the man didn't speak after that. Ari's silly stunt came back to bite her in the ass. The silence was now putting pressure on her, the reason for that silence. She got frustrated and sighed in her head before speaking out loud. Let's cut the casual talk, shall we? Who are you? Ari answered the man's question with a question of her own. The man didn't take long to turn around and finally face the elf, his target for blackmail. He nonchalantly stepped towards Ari and replied casually. You have never been blackmailed, have you, Miss Arizi Hannah? Allow me to give you a small introduction to the roles assigned to each of us in this small play we've got going here. You as the one who is about to get blackmailed will answer all our questions to the extent of your ability and knowledge. That's the role assigned to you. You need to stick to your script. We as blackmailers will keep our identities under wraps. That's because there's nothing wrong with our heads. We will not answer anything that can be traced back to our identities. Why do you think we wore these masks? Just because they look cute. Umph. Could have fooled me. And only you think that those hideous masks look cute. Ari thought in her head. She also thought that if she were to ever become a blackmailer or a cultist on the run, she wouldn't choose such eye-stinging masks for herself even if someone puts a Mana gun on her head. The broad-shouldered man came closer to her, looked at moderately curvaceous Arizi Hannah with a sly glint in his eyes, and replied with a now playful voice. Haha. You understood your role. That's good. Now let's restart our conversation, alright. Miss Arizi Hannah, how was your day? Ari helplessly shook her head before speaking up. What do you think? Not pleasant, ever since I received your blackmail scroll. The man chuckled and started walking to his subordinate. He folded his right arm, placed the elbow on her shoulders, and rested his head on his palm before replying. Yes. Blackmail. It indeed is blackmail. But if you were to ask me personally, I wouldn't want our interaction to be labeled with that word. It has a negative connotation to it. And I don't like that. What we are about to have here is a simple form of exchange. Nothing too serious really. You have 3 people under your care that we want to retrieve and liberate. Give us those 3 people and we will be out of your hair. Simple, right? This is simple indeed. Ari had that thought. But what she said was completely different to what she was thinking. That depends. Don't play mysterious and give me clear-cut answers if they are not related to your identities. Who are these people and what are you planning to do with them? The man nodded in understanding and laid down what he wanted in front of the renowned elf hero of her city. Reiner and his colleagues. The former Beast Bloods. We want to retrieve them. Give us those slaves and your secret stays a secret forever. As for what will we do with them? Miss City Protector, it's just as I said. Stick to your script. Chapter 256, Die is cast. As for what we will do with them? It's just as I said, Miss City Protector. Stick to your script. The broad-shouldered man instructed Ari in a cold, commanding tone while flashing a gracious smile. When he said this, a part of his mana signature fluctuated and his aura briefly erupted. Ari felt the chills in her bones when she sensed his signature that wasn't quite human. This guy is F rank. Some of these anthrope cultists are a crazy bunch of degenerates with equally crazy techniques, I must say. Their heretic paths take them further away from who they once were. Sad and scary at the same time. Ari cleared her throat and spoke up. All right. I understand. But I can't just hand them over right away. They are the city administration's property after all. I'll need to buy them from the administration and then I can. The broad-shouldered man shook his head in denial and said out loud. No, Miss Arizi Hannah. That'll take a long time and raise suspicion. Instead, you can make up a false Beast Bloods case related to their hideout and ask the city administration to lend Reiner and his teammates to you. Then your official report will say that you were attacked by Beast Bloods while investigating the case and Reiner and his colleagues were killed in the ambush. This way, the city administration won't have to look for their human resource and the case will be closed then and there. This is the way you'll do it. There will be no getting around it. Do we understand each other? Damn it. There goes my plan to buy time. Ari cursed the broad-shouldered mind in her head but nodded at his instructions outwardly. Oh yes, we had 4 Beast Bloods with us as prisoners. But only 3 of them are serving the city as slaves. Do you want me to fetch that remaining member as well? Ari asked innocently. She sounded helpful, but the man laughed mockingly before answering. Miss Arizi Hannah, you underestimate us. Do you think we didn't do our background check before contacting you? She's been taken as a legal slave. Bringing her into our fold will only raise our risks of being apprehended by the kingdom. Ari had to try sabotaging the man's plans. But she sighed after seeing her silly trick getting caught by the man before nodding at him. Good. Rest assured, I'm not trying to stir up trouble, Arizi Hannah. You'll find that I'm as easygoing as an innocent newborn lamb if things work out my way. Comparing yourself to a newborn lamb? You sure can lie as easily as you breathe, Mr. Mask. Hee hee. The broad-shouldered man could hear the petite lady's laughter and mockery in the back of his head. He just outwardly shrugged his shoulders before replying in the same telepathic manner he had heard the lady's voice. What? I said, if things work out my way. Which is true if you think about it. Mister. The broad-shouldered man's telepathic conversation with the petite young lady was cut short by Ari's words. Oh, you can call me Mr. Mask. All right. Mr. Mask, you are from the Beast Bloods, aren't you? It's fine if it's just these slaves that you want. But if you have any other schemes you are hatching right now, I'll remind you that my connections with the Beast Bloods aren't completely severed. Even if they've turned sour because of the recent events. Triple X will have to intervene in our exchange if you try to pull something I wasn't expecting in this deal. This is my warning to you. As you said, let's just stick to our scripts. The broad-shouldered man's narrowed eyes suddenly exuded a cunning light when he heard Marie's name. This time, he didn't threaten back but just replied with a nod of his own. All right. Let's finalize our plan then. Ari said and started discussing the finer details about the plan. There were so many questions she wanted to ask the duo. For example, what was so special about Reiner and his colleagues? And what use could they be to the man? But she had come to realize that this man in front of her was not willing to share any information. So she thought of doing a thorough check on Reiner and his colleagues herself before turning them over to the man. They might be able to help her approach the man from behind without him being aware of it. Ari started to plot as she discussed a few things with the duo. Ari wanted to include May in her mess from the get-go. But the latter was nowhere near her when this blackmail incident took place. So she decided to use her name as a deterrent. Ari discussed and finalized the plan's details with the man. Any attempt at buying time or introducing loopholes was foiled by the man's wits. So she just gave up trying to outsmart him in the end. A long time after Arizi Hannah had left. Reen, the coast is clear, right? Aaron asked Reen while he was in the form of the broad-shouldered man. He had shapeshifted into Ron Damien for a meeting with Arizi Hannah. Reen had been there in the form of Elena. Yes. There's nobody following or tracking us as far as I can tell. This woman has kept the secret about her involvement with the cultists deep in her heart, it seems. She doesn't trust anybody to have her back during this situation. Aaron agreed to Reen's line of thoughts and replied. It has turned into our advantage. Damn, I love messing with criminals. They just can't ask for help openly. Suits me just fine. Haha. But hold on a moment. Who is this May? Or Marie this woman was talking about? And why do I feel that I've heard that name before? Aaron stroked his chin as he was walking away from his blackmail site. His cold was located at a distance from this place. Marie is the name your teacher Levine spoke about when she was telling you about her previous apprentice. As she walked beside her master, Reen casually reminded him of this. The latter froze in his tracks and slapped his forehead after he remembered Levin's talk with him. Ha! If I am lucky again, then this would be Marla's sister. Sigh. Let's hope she doesn't get involved in this mess. Aaron thought this out loud and followed after Reen, who had gone ahead. The die had already been cast. He might as well play the game to the best of his abilities to come on top in the end. Chapter 257, Arthur's Pet Project. There was a drawing of a huge array about 100 meters across on barren open ground. There were plenty of stars shining in the sky above. But the array itself didn't need any starlight to make its presence known. That's because the runic inscriptions it was made of were exuding a distinct milky white light. A middle-aged man was sitting atop a platform made of the inscribed stone, which was placed over the array. He had his eyes closed and was seen regulating his breathing in a particular pattern. The man wasn't alone in his surroundings though. An older man in his 50s and a young woman waited outside the array for the ranker sitting atop the runic stone platform to finish his work. How long is this going to take, Sybil? We've been here for a few days now. Sybil seemed to have been irked by the man in his 50s comment. She looked at him annoyingly before replying. It was you that came to us asking for help, Arthur. A bit of patience can take you a long way. It's not easy for Garvin either, you know. What you are seeing right now is him working his ass off for the rewards you promised us. I understand that you want to keep your mouth shut about it. But since you started asking questions, I might as well return the favor. What is your obsession with Ozenwood's butcher anyway? Why are you going to such extensive lengths to find him? Garvin chuckled. But Sybil could tell the range of emotions Arthur was feeling right now wasn't anywhere near to joy. It was also his leaked-out mana signature that attested to her womanly instincts. Ha ha ha. Let's just say he has stolen something that I worked on for years on end. I spent so many resources on that project of mine that half of my wealth has vanished. But I never tried to cut costs on it even once. It was meant to be inherited by my son, after all. The guy turned all my efforts and plans to create something magnificent into shit. Why shouldn't I hunt him? I will take away from him what is rightfully mine. If that is not possible, then I'll imprison his ass and make him my slave for the rest of his sorry life. I'll then kill him in the most painful way possible after taking away everything he snatched from me. Arthur flashed a maniacal grin after he concluded what he was saying. This was the first time in a long time that he had expressed what he truly felt. He had been quiet about the whole thing for months now. Fuming from the insides. Sybil's questions finally allowed Arthur to express what he truly felt about the Ozenwood's butcher. And he felt rather satisfied after doing it. Like a huge boulder had been lifted off of his shoulders. Arthur also knew that Garvin and Sybil were a trusted pair. They were the rankers who had dedicated their lives to the study of magic. In a way, he could relate to them. And trust them to keep this affair limited to them. He had also been planning something monumental ever since he explored a certain ranker's purgatory. And this ambitious project of his had dragged him into the most fundamental studies of magic that no ordinary rankers had access to. The years passed by. The more Arthur learned, the more he realized how little he knew about mana, magic, and the mysteries of the world he was living in. His exploration into that ranker's purgatory and the studies that followed had allowed him to see ranker's journey in a different light. But that study also made Arthur realize that it was too late for him to change his path. For him to pursue the long-lost path of magic, he had to regress in his ranks and turn all his life's work to zero before he could go on. It wasn't something Arthur was willing to do. He thought hard but finally decided against it. And yet he couldn't let what he had studied and found so far go to waste. So he came up with the plan to let his son take his place. But all his plans were foiled by the wretched OWB. He had gathered into one single project all of Arthur's wishes, resources, and hard work. And the result of that project was obtained by a man who came out of nowhere. And the most infuriating thing about the incident was that Arthur couldn't find the guy even after employing all his covert and overt tactics. He had used the kingdom's channels at his disposal to hunt the OWB officially, placing a hefty bounty on him. Arthur's anti-OWB campaign had been working great. The latter had been linked with a lot of falsified crimes by now. Arthur labeled him a cultist without knowing anything about it to turn the public sentiments against the butcher. Arthur had also put Jaime's panel on the task of finding Ozenwood's butcher under the guise of the panel caring about their students' welfare. Plus, he had hired a lot of external help anonymously to get even a shred of a clue regarding the butcher's identity. But all his efforts had yielded no results. The exceptional third-party rangers he had hired would go round and round in the Ozenwoods following the butcher's trails and end up at the same place they started from. The various leading historians he had hired only gave him vague descriptions about Ozenwood's butcher being a rankless entity and other minute details that didn't make sense. Arthur spent restless days and sleepless nights trying to track and know about the butcher in any way he could. But the usual methods didn't seem to work. Thus, Arthur had to seek the couple's help despite his initial reluctance. This was because Garvin and Sybil Carr were well-known figures in Edinburgh. And he wanted to keep his project away from the limelight if he could help it. But Arthur was forced to realize something by the elusive butcher. The latter had a powerful backer. So his ruse to downplay his cards would be futile, no matter if he decides to use them or not. So Arthur had to knock on Garvin's door and ask for help. The nerd was happy to do so under the condition of promising rewards, of course. Arthur was furious and about to lose his shit after Garvin listed the things he wanted from him. But Garvin Carr, the genius array master, was his best bet to find or get a clue about the butcher's identity. So he had to give in to Garvin's wishes in the end. This was what dragged him to the barren place. Now he was waiting patiently, or at least trying to wait patiently for the array master to fulfill his end of the promise. Chapter 258, Preordained. Arthur had to give in to Garvin's wishes in the end. This was what dragged him to the barren place. Now he was waiting patiently, or at least trying to wait patiently for the array master to fulfill his end of the promise. Some more days passed by. Arthur came back to visit the couple again. Garvin was still at it again, meditating on the stone platform. Sybil came to greet him with 2 wine glasses. She offered him one while taking a sip from the other. "I was wondering when you'll be back." "Don't worry. Garvin shouldn't take long now." Arthur nodded at Sybil and took the wine glass before asking, "What is the true purpose of this array, Sybil?" "From its runic inscriptions, I can guess that it is related to guiding rankers to a state of epiphany. But I can't understand anything beyond that." Sybil stirred the glass gently and took a whiff of the wine she was savoring before answering. "To be honest, Arthur, I don't know much about arrays either apart from the basic stuff despite all these years living with the array maniac. But I'll tell you what I heard from my husband. It is indeed an array that increases the chances of ranking entities entering the state of epiphany. Since it was initiated by us, it'll have most of the limitations and disadvantages of the forced state of epiphany. Plus, the array also extends the amount of time one can stay in a state of epiphany without getting kicked out of it. Right now, that array has created an invisible cocoon of mana around my husband while forcing him to respond to his will. Furthermore, I've also made Garvin consume a couple of potions I created myself to help him in this task. It should give us better results overall." Arthur heard that and nodded before taking his first sip of the wine. He was pleasantly surprised by its taste. He chuckled before replying, "Ha ha ha. Enough about the arrays. Let's talk about this wine. This is indeed a high-quality counterfeit, Sybil. I feel like my almost stagnant understanding of the path has been galvanized again. Even one of the most prominent poti-winners of Edinburgh, Sybil Carr, can't resist the temptation of trying to counterfeit elven ales. I don't know what the elves will say about it, but human rankers of our ranks will surely be happy and come out of their caves to celebrate. I'm sorry for getting off topic, Sybil. And you'd also have to forgive my lack of knowledge about anything related to potions. But why is it so hard for humans to concoct a potion that has the same effect as the elven ales?" Sybil didn't like that Arthur called her wine brewing a counterfeit of 11 ales. But she had to admit that it was true. She sighed deeply before replying, "The study of mana is endless for researchers like us, Arthur. We are always curious and on our toes regarding the wonders that are yet to be discovered. But the more we learn about it, the more we understand that mana is not curious about most of us or our existence at all. It just sees us as parasites that are trying to leech the mana off and make it our own for our benefit and longer lifespan. Something that wasn't preordained by nature to us." Arthur shrugged his shoulders before stating what he felt. "Isn't that a normal thing for rankers though? It should apply to all the rankers out there. Not just human rankers. If mana sees all living beings who absorb and make use of mana as parasites, then that evens out the field for all of us. If everybody is special, then nobody is." Sybil had her eyes fixated on her husband. She observed his condition with all her senses while having a conversation with Arthur. She replied to Arthur after checking everything was still alright about Garvin and he was fine. "What I have learned after dedicating my entire life to the art of poti-winning is that the world's mana loves entities that are in sync with their base nature. We humans like to think a lot. I mean a lot. The wheels inside our heads are always churning. Some of us might even take pride in that. We define our behaviors by social norms. And in doing that, we prevent ourselves from understanding our true nature. Hee. Maybe humans' base nature is that they'll always try to run away from their real selves. Arthur had a blank face after hearing Sibyl's roundabout reply. The former understood that her philosophies had slipped over the guy's head, so she chuckled again and summed it up for him. What I'm trying to say here, Arthur, is that we humans add too much of our consciousness in everything we do. Whether it's array inscription, poetry, artifact crafting, or any other mana-related field, the jobs related to those fields require us to hone our consciousness. Conscious efforts like those help turn more of our kind into experts in our fields. But those same conscious efforts prevent us from becoming true maestros. Gulp. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? After she finished her explanation and the drink, Sybil asked Arthur. The latter nodded before adding on. I do indeed. There are more human experts in every known field than the other races if the sample size is restricted to, let's say, 100 random rankers. But the number drops down drastically if we were to only consider the geniuses of any given field. I still don't get one thing though. Even if we do have a low number of geniuses in our fields, at least a few of them should be able to pull off the feats geniuses from other races have. We can even use those other racial geniuses and their works as references. So what's stopping us human rankers from doing something as easy as making a damn ale? Sybil looked at Arthur with a hint of anger in her eyes. She wanted to rebuke him because he had just insulted her husband, and every other human genius with his speech. But she later pitied his lack of knowledge despite being a successful ranker himself. Her anger vanished after that. Sybil, you don't get angry with men who know nothing. Sybil self-restrained herself before trying to reason with Arthur. Chapter 259, Halflings. Sybil, you don't get angry at men who know nothing. Sybil self-restrained herself before trying to reason with Arthur. Arthur, you need to understand this. Our extreme sense of existence taints our mana sense and mana signature. Because we employ our mana in our fields, the results we obtain are also tainted by that. The more we have that taint, the more inferior the quality of every ranking item we craft for ourselves. And it applies to lower-ranked humans as well as those who have progressed much further in their ranking journey. I would even go so far as to say that human rankers become more arrogant of themselves as they progress further in their ranks. After she said that, Sybil glanced at Arthur to see if he got her meaning. The latter simply maintained a poker face, giving her no clue that he got it. So she verbally marched on before Arthur could ask. The world's mana doesn't like a part of itself to be forcefully snatched by the masses of giant egos. It wants the mana to be as pure as before we intercepted it. There is a direct correlation between the way of the elements and the state of epiphany. You can only start walking on the path of your element once the world's mana gives you the rights and direction to do so. In contrast, when a human subconsciously interacts with the world's mana during their epiphanies, their egos prevent them from believing everything the mana has to say to them. We just can't help it even if we decide to not do so before the state of epiphany hits us. Arthur wasn't a genius researcher like Garvin and Sybil Carr. And he wasn't that knowledgeable about the in and out of their respective fields either. But he finally gained something from the potioneer's explanation. You mean you need to enter the state of epiphany to make something like the elven ale? That would make elves monsters, wouldn't it? I mean, look at the amount of ale getting sold throughout the kingdom. I know it's still rare and limited in quantity, but the amount is still large enough to scare most humans who know what that condition implies about ale brewing. If the elves can enter the state of epiphany that easily and that often, they can use that state to progress further in their ranking journey as well. And yet, we don't see that many high-ranked entities in the elven race if we consider how easy it is for them to enter the state of epiphany. At least not on the surface. Why is that? Sybil shook her head after hearing Arthur's discussion and replied patiently. I can't answer that on behalf of all the Faeruns, Arthur. And I can't say how their ale brewing or their practice of honing their elements work either. The fact is, though, that their way of life, their freedom to do whatever they wish and seeking out various experiences are crucial in their ranking journey. Those experiences and expressions of freedom become their mediators and help them in communicating with the world's mana when the state of epiphany finally hits them. That is something we can only emulate on a cosmetic level. Most of us humans will have strong beliefs and opinions about everything we find worthy of our time and resources. This is how we've been designed. While most elves can see something miraculous in the most mundane of things, they'll wear their hearts on their sleeves around you if they trust you. So if and when the state of epiphany hits them, the elves can get the most out of it. Their hearts are open to the path suggested by the world's mana, regardless of how contrasting it sounds. This all happens subconsciously, of course. Neither the elves nor we humans can consciously make our decisions while our psyches are suspended in that ethereal state. And neither of us can influence the mana to tell us exactly what we want to know. That's why I said it all comes down to the most fundamental nature of all living things. It seemed that Arthur had gained some insight, as he agreed with the potioneer's patient explanations. And that understanding made him a bit reluctant to come to terms with it. That would mean humans will always stay one step behind elves and other races that excel in their fields of expertise. Is there no way around it? Sybil checked out her husband's condition and replied to Arthur without looking at him. I'm not aware of any such thing officially existing. Early researchers thought halflings would be the key to understanding and maximizing the benefits of the state of epiphany by developing ranking techniques based on their constitutions. But they dropped the idea as soon as it came out. Let's take a child between a human and an elf for example. That child, whether it be called half-human or half-elf depending upon its appearance, will carry the shortcomings of both its parents in most cases. First of all, it will never be able to talk with the mana the way elves do because it is half-human. In addition, it won't get better in its field even if it studies it diligently as it's not completely human either. Arthur knew halflings were considered worthless by pure-blooded rankers of all the races. But he didn't seem to understand the reason behind it. So Sybil took a long sigh and elaborated further. The reason I say this is because a human way of crafting ranking items depends on our ability to either consciously or subconsciously blend our consciousness into our mana signature. All our recipes and crafting techniques take our mana signature into account. Of course, it taints the final products. But that is something we can manage and make peace with. But a halfling's mana signature drastically differs from that of a human. This anomaly is serious enough to make all of our recipes and techniques virtually useless to the half-elf ranker. And since the halflings cannot hone their elements the same way elves can, the elven recipes and techniques also become equally useless to them. So a halfling suffers from both sides and has no real advantage over the races it was born from. Halflings are not respected by either race because they are considered useless. Plus, they are rare to be born in the first place because the chances of their natural progeny are ridiculously low. So it seems nature and the world's mana also don't like their existence either. From her storage, Sybil retrieved a vial of potion. It seemed she was preparing for something after looking at her husband's condition. Chapter 260, Bonus the Manhunt Resumes. So a halfling suffers from both sides and has no real advantage over the races it was born from. From her storage, Sybil retrieved a vial of potion. It seemed she was preparing for something after looking at her husband's condition. Arthur ignored Sybil's actions and asked her in a serious voice. Sybil, you started that whole explanation by saying you don't know any official way that exists to remedy our lack of natural talent in the way of the elements. So how much do you know about the unofficial way? And how successful will it be based on your calculations? Sybil stopped looking at her husband and turned around. She narrowed her eyes on Arthur as if to discern something. Then she sighed before replying. You of all people shouldn't bring this subject up, Arthur. Do I need to remind you who you are? But as a researcher, I don't like to cover the truth with a cocoon of lies. Since it's you who asked me to talk about the forgotten history, I am bold enough to tell you what I know. Yes. The very existence of demi-humans in the past was the answer researchers were looking for. They were said to have all the advantages of both races. We both know from redacted documents about the history of this continent that the demi-humans were able to interact with the elements like the mana beasts. They did this by simply existing and developing the inherent spells related to their bloodlines. And they could also produce ranking items like humans, estimated to be better in quality than us. Plus, they could practice their ranking techniques like humans to speed up their ranking journey even further. They broke through their ranks at terrifying speeds that would unbalance the natural order. They were the real monsters that walked this earth once. As for your last question, I believe turning into demi-humans would have mitigated humans' lack of expertise in the way of the elements. I had heard the rumors that you were trying to learn more about demi-humans. Seems like those rumors were true. I don't mind the curiosity, Arthur. Being a researcher in my field, I can even relate to it. But you need to understand this. The world works on an unseen equation that balances things out. If there are so many benefits of turning into a demi-human, you can bet your ass that it would have equally terrifying repercussions. The demi-humans are the abominations of this world. So I hope you don't go beyond satiating your curiosity and bring trouble to all of us. Arthur humped at Sybil's warning before replying in a plain tone. I know what I'm doing, Sybil. I was just trying to get your opinion on these things. Besides, you might want to turn back and see how your husband is doing. It seems something's happening to him. Arthur pointed at where Garvin was sitting while he said that. Sybil dropped the whole subject right away and turned around. She saw that Garvin's body spasmed and knew it was time. Her husband had warned this would happen, so she was ready to remedy the situation with her potion as soon as things settled down. The array's lights had started dimming before getting brighter than before. They followed Garvin's breathing pattern. And they immediately began exuding an erratic range of luminance once Garvin started spasming. Garvin opened his eyes and mouth abruptly. His eyes and the insides of his mouth had also been lit up in the same light the array was exuding. But slowly things seemed to be settling down as the lights grew dimmer by the moment. Arthur could now see that Garvin's eyes didn't have their iris at their usual places. They had been rolled backwards, making his eyes devoid of the usual features they had, as only the white sclera was made visible. Arthur's spasm stopped. But his skin started drying up at a rapid pace. He quickly turned into a living mummy before his eyes could get back to normal. As soon as he was conscious of his surroundings and his conditions, he looked around and found his wife looking at him with concern while clutching the vial tightly. He nodded at her, telling her he was done and it was safe to approach him now. The ground on which the array was drawn started turning into a mini drought land. It started cracking, resulting in the formation of numerous drought lines. But Sybil didn't care about what she was stepping upon. She quickly appeared in front of her husband, uncorked the vial, and helped him gulp down the content within it slowly. Sybil's mastery of potion making wasn't just for the show. The potion's effects kicked in and Garvin's mummified state started reversing back to normal. His body let out an unelementalized wave of mana as it started to regain its appearance before this phenomenon took place. Garvin took a while to come to his senses. He assured her with his eyes and a pat on her hand that he was okay. Or as okay as he can be at the moment. The repercussions of using this array weren't over. But the real danger was past him. And his wife's concoction had helped him a lot. Arthur didn't care about the couple's bonding time. He approached the duo and raised his eyebrow at Garvin. He was asking the array master subtly about what he had gained from the stunt he pulled just now in front of him. Garvin didn't mind Arthur's rude behavior. He knew he was going to get paid handsomely for all the work he had done for him. Especially when he had learned one of the most crucial clues about the Ozenwood's butcher. Cough cough. Honey, I'm fine. No need to worry. Arthur, cough cough. I hope you remember your promise and bring me all the things I've listed to you. Cough. Plus, I'm obligated to charge you extra for the damage to my mana core in the process. I'm sure a person of your caliber wouldn't mind. But rejoice. Ha ha ha, cough cough. I have found something crucial you can use in your manhunt. Garvin coughed the whole way in his speech. But Arthur got his message loud and clear. He couldn't help flashing a cunning smile after he realized that the OWB manhunt can be resumed with a fresh lead. Chapter 261, Price to Pay. Rejoice. Ha ha ha, cough cough. I have found something crucial you can use in your manhunt. But Arthur needed to know if the lead was solid or not. After all, he was about to pay the geek a hefty amount of resources for it. He wanted to make sure that it was well spent. So he asked to confirm. How sure are you about the lead, Garvin? How can we trust the leads generated by this array? Garvin looked at Arthur with a tinge of anger in his eyes. But he didn't speak immediately. Sybil helped him get up and snapped her fingers. The earth element mana and the earth beneath were combined to create a medium-sized table and 3 chairs. Sybil helped her husband sit on one of the chairs while she took the chair next to him. Arthur didn't need an invitation. He took the remaining chair and waited for the array master to tell him what he needed to hear. Garvin returned to his normal condition when he drank the tea made by his pioneer wife. Only then did he look at Arthur in the eyes before replying. That array was not my creation, Arthur. According to the Royal Library where I got it, it came from one of the Rankers' utopias, which is still kept a secret from the public's eyes. However, it was recovered long ago, so you probably aren't aware of it. What this array does is enable the Ranker to enter the forced state of epiphany. But if it had done only that, it wouldn't be all that different from the arrays we know of, would it? Arthur nodded his head while tapping his fingers on the surface of the table. He stopped his action suddenly and guessed what Garvin was trying to say to him. You mean you have to pay a price for using this array? It was obvious from your condition anyway. Tell me, what's the catch? Garvin massaged his stiff shoulders with both his hands and continued his speech. As you might have guessed, the array keeps the Ranker's mind from falling into the subconscious state. This very state is needed for Rankers to be immersed in their epiphanies, forced or not. But thanks to the activation of this array, you can still access your memories and recall your experiences while you are in the ethereal state. You know what that means, right? It means instead of the world's mana solving your random doubts, you get to ask a set of specific questions to it. Arthur's eyes opened wide in surprise after he heard what the array master was trying to say. Garvin verbally marched forward before Arthur could interrupt him. I must say that the person who created this array must have been a genius lunatic. Lunatic because the guy only cared about the output of the array and not its after effects. It was almost like he wanted the Rankers who use it to suffer consequences after they were done with it. There's no countermeasure to prevent that. I guess he wanted to balance things out before they got out of hand. That means the array forces you to pay a heavy tax for your transgression with the world's mana when it senses that you were conscious while being in the ethereal state. Your mana core gets damaged right after you leave the state. There are other repercussions as well that I don't want to mention. Basically, the higher your ranking status is, the greater the repercussions. Understanding dawned on Arthur. He recalled the former demanding extra compensation for his damaged mana core. I'll pay you extra, don't worry. But you are not the man to pay that heavy a price just to complete my request, Garvin. You must have figured something out, I'm sure. Garvin looked at his wife and smiled at her, indicating he was thankful for her. I didn't. It was Sybil who mitigated the effects of using the array with her doses of exquisite potions. My monocore still got damaged after using the array. I have been able to reduce the damage a great deal after she administered me her remedies before and after the procedure. I should be able to recover from these repercussions in a few months. The world's mana and its all-encompassing higher consciousness don't know how to lie. My point is, you can trust the intel I've gained after facing these repercussions, for asking the questions that you wanted to know the answers about. Arthur had to believe in Garvin after closely examining his condition. Only after he was assured did he ask him about the lead. Garvin was a geek array master. But he was no pushover. He demanded he is paid first before he gave the lead to Arthur. The latter had a couple of creases on his forehead, but he agreed to the guy's demands. He retrieved all the resources that he had promised him from his storage. All right. Listen to this, Arthur. The lead I got is. He told Arthur what he had gained from the higher consciousness he had just talked with. Then he nodded at his wife, who supported him in getting up. The couple soon left, leaving Arthur alone in his seat. He soon had another visitor in the form of a completely black-clothed man who seemed to have appeared from thin air. His face had also been masked by the black mask. He bent the knee in front of Arthur and placed his right hand on his heart as if performing a salute. What should we do with this information, my lord? Arthur looked at the man and said out loud in a voice that was laced with his suppressed anger. What should we do? He. We don't want to scare the guy or create any ruckus. We grab him as soon as we confirm that it's him using this lead. Anyway, what about my son? Is he progressing the way we wanted him to? I would still want to proceed with our earlier plan if it's salvageable after capturing that thief. Arthur narrowed his eyes and asked his servant. It seemed he was still hoping to continue with his project. Chapter 262, Jason's background. What about my son? Is he progressing the way we wanted him to? I would still want to proceed with our earlier plan if it's salvageable after capturing that thief. Arthur narrowed his eyes and asked his servant. It seemed he was still hoping to continue with his project. The black-clothed man cleared his throat and replied. Well, we wanted him to focus more on his ranking journey. But it seems he is enjoying the publicity he is getting. So he is a bit busy bullying kids his age. But I'm sure that's just a phase that will pass sooner rather than later. Jason is a smart kid for his age, my lord. He'll soon see that ranking wars are nothing but a distraction for him. Arthur nodded before asking in a grim voice. That's good. Don't give too much credit to his wit, Oliver. He is indeed smart but doesn't know when or where to use it. Sigh. All in due time, I guess. The hormones raging in his veins need to settle down to make him truly focused on his path. What about Eisen's grandson? I had heard from you that he was no less talented than my kid. Oliver pondered for a while, trying to come up with words. But he reported his observations just the way he felt about them. Ivor Ozen is more of a dark horse than I thought. He is growing at a tremendous pace as a ranker. We should consider inviting him under our fold. Arthur shook his head and replied immediately. I would want to do it. But the man behind Ivor is a wolf in sheep's clothing. If Ivor can be influenced by me at a young age, he can surely be influenced by his grandfather as well. Don't underestimate their relationship despite what the lad feels about his household or his dead brother. Blood is thicker than water, you know. Oliver was silent after hearing his lord's reply. The latter chuckled after understanding what his silence meant. Are you wondering why I sent my son to the city of Ozen under Eisen's care? One of the reasons was the project I ran in the Ozen woods. As soon as the project was finished, I wanted the kid on standby. But it's also because I know Eisen. Even if someone approached him from the shadows, he would never even think about harming my son. Sometimes the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Oliver nodded at Arthur as he kept his head down. He gave a slight bowing gesture towards Arthur, got up, turned around, and was about to leave when he heard his lord's cold voice from behind him. Oliver, did any more petty attacks on Jason's life take place apart from the ones I know of? Oliver resumed his previous stance and replied slowly. No, my lord. The opposing force has stopped targeting Jason for quite a while now. Rest assured, we'll still be vigilant like always in protecting him to the full extent of our abilities. Arthur laughed out loud when he heard Oliver's politically correct reply. Ha 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 ha. Opposing force you say, Oliver? That's my wife you are talking about. You know it? I know it. You can at least be honest with me when there's nobody around. She thinks killing my talented bastard son would secure the future of the weak kids she has given me. Frankly, I want to punish her for the misadventures. But it can also serve as the reason Jason remains on his toes. That pressure, that constant state of danger has contributed to his progress so far. I don't want him to get laid back and lose focus anytime soon in his early years as a ranker. As always, Oliver didn't reply to the comment. He waited patiently this time to get dismissed by Arthur. He didn't want to return to his kneeling position right after he got back on his feet again. All right. You can leave now. Make sure to tell Jason he'd need to prepare in case he needs to follow through with the project. Provide him with some resources so that he can go through another body cleansing. And tell the Illuminati to speed up their operation too. That Ranker's Purgatory is a treasure trove. I still regret my choice to share its existence with them. Nevertheless, cultists are the best tools for this type of operation. I've concluded that only a real demi-human can reap real rewards from that purgatory. But I want to see how much the Anthropes can get from that place. And keep an eye on the Illuminati too. Although we've worked with them before, cultists will always be cultists. They won't shy away from backstabbing us when the rewards from purgatory are lucrative enough. I don't want any mistakes this time. Clear-cut results, Oliver. Do you get it? I understand, my lord. We'll make sure of that. Arthur watched Oliver take his leave in silence. He remembered about Eisen after his subject was inadvertently brought up. He had sheltered his son when Arthur asked if he was willing when they had met up at the royal court one day. That was the reason behind Jason staying in the city of Ozen. Later, Eisen discovered what Arthur was doing in his backyard. Instead of directly demanding a bribe to keep his mouth shut, Eisen just let him know the fact that he was aware. This was another political move he had played on him, letting him decide the bribe amount. Arthur still didn't know if whatever he offered was enough for Eisen. Or if he was angry at him for carrying out a dangerous experiment on his territory. Arthur thought for a while and then shook his head. There was no point in dwelling on the past. In purgatory, the real reward was waiting for him to grab it. He wouldn't let it go away, no matter what. With a million thoughts running through his head, Arthur started to leave too. He had so many things to plan and do in the coming days. What he didn't realize is that the OWB he was searching so desperately for was also going to be crazy busy just like him. Chapter 263, Renita's Progress. Aaron was shocked. He was shocked by Renita's progress in such a short period. He was currently battling against her. It was a mock practice suggested by the ranger at their usual spot. Sedated perception. Aaron used his go-to-time element spell when he felt he was about to get boxed in. This time the bullets weren't his enemies. The mana arrows made of the wind element had taken their place. Renita had another style in her repertoire without discarding her original one. This was thanks to her mentor, Almera, who used crossbows in her battle style. Renita had been gifted an F-rank 4-star crossbow artifact by Almera when she thought the young ranger could use the same efficiently in her battle style. Turns out the mentor's decision was right all along. To a non-ranger ranker, mana bullets and crossbows wouldn't seem that different. But they were two different battle styles for rangers. The biggest difference was in the way they were used. Most bullet-oriented battle styles required rangers to manifest mana guns with their mana before they could start aiming and shooting at their targets. But the use of crossbows and arrows in battle was almost always dependent on the artifact at hand. The gun and bullet style was famous for barrage attacks. It also helped rangers with long-range attacks. Because they would travel faster than the arrows. But the style also came with its own set of disadvantages. First, since it required rankers to manifest the mana guns first, it would cause delay and waste of mana. Second, it was not all that useful against close combat experts if they came within striking distance. The close combat rankers' reflexes were effective enough to predict the bullet's trajectory, take detours, and launch countermeasures. That's why whenever Aaron got close to Renita, it would be a game over for her. The crossbow style, by contrast, does not require mana manifested weapons. Rankers were able to shoot out arrows from them as soon as they manifested them. Those who adopted the style were able to remain highly reactive to any sudden ambush while consuming a minimal amount of mana. But since crossbows were slow to travel in the long range, not a lot of rangers used them. A ranger's path required them to have a bunch of long-range attacks in their arsenal. And not everybody was interested in working hard to include another battle style at the cost of extra effort and work. Most rangers rely on guns and bullets. They would let their teammates take care of their vulnerability in mid and close range combat. And it worked out for them for the most part. But Renita had decided to do more than most rangers. She had been working on the spell and the battle style ever since Almera decided to try it a few months back. She only asked Aaron to battle with her using this style when she felt confident to do so. The Renita of the previous timeline didn't use crossbows and arrows even after she had become famous as a ranger. That's why Aaron was shocked when she first showed him her brand new battle style. Aaron had forgotten that in her eyes there was a certain close combat expert that influenced her choice of battle style. She wanted not to be helpless against him when he got closer to her. That's why she worked extra hard to mitigate her vulnerability against close combat experts by adding a new battle style. She hadn't said this to anyone till now. She didn't even use it while completing the first Basank mission, because she wasn't sure how it would work in real missions. But her first Basank mission made her realize something. It was the fact that she could only see Aaron's back and would not follow him as an equal if she didn't change. She had realized that he was that dominant with or without her help, both on and off the field. Aaron thought the mock battle was over since he was within striking range. But he was taken aback when the ranger retrieved a crossbow from her storage and started shooting. Sedated perception. Aaron relied on his time element spell to effectively dodge the mana arrows targeting his stomach. But that didn't surprise the ranger. She only chuckled when she saw the surprised expressions on her crush's face. For once, she felt like bullying him the way he used to do to her. Aaron tried to keep a safe distance from Renita. But he soon found out that the mana arrows were of the homing type to his utter astonishment. The 5 mana arrows followed his retreat. At least 2 of them would have hit him if he hadn't activated sedated perception. Wow. This girl is full of surprises. Aaron thought as he retrieved his guitars from his storage. He rarely used his guitars anymore for mock battles. Only Raimi could get him to use his weapons these days. But Renita had been added to that list at this point. Aaron turned back and assumed a defensive stance. There was no use running from the arrows when they could just follow him around. Even if they didn't hit him because of his speed, they would just tire him out in the long run. Blitz bolt. Aaron ran his lightning element spell through his weapons and made contact with the first arrow with it. The arrow and the weapon collided. Since the arrow was made from the wind element, it didn't take much on Aaron's part to destroy it. But the arrow's sudden destruction, which had compressed wind as its foundation, led to the sudden emergence of the gale. And that gale pushed Aaron's hand back. The same hand which he had used to tackle the arrow with. Aaron's hand was now up to his head while his other hand was not ready to tackle another arrow that was coming for him. The second arrow made contact with his shoulder and destroyed his protective mana layer. Unfortunately, his chainmail armor hadn't covered that region of his body. The tip of the arrow was lodged deep under his skin and drew blood. The arrow was soon destroyed because Aaron's protective mana layer was actively working to do so. But the damage had been done. Damn it! This is more annoying than the bullets at close range. Aaron thought as he resumed his defensive position. He knew by then that he had to use his hands instead. But this wasn't all he was supposed to do if he wanted to win this mock battle. Otherwise, it would turn into a mockery battle for him. Aaron used his left hand to tackle the arrow, only barely. By that time his right hand had assumed the position he wanted. Fuck this shit. Let's get to her. Aaron thought as he finished defending the last arrow from the barrage. He again tried closing in on the ranger despite knowing full well another barrage was going to get aimed at him. Chapter 264, Don't Fear the Reaper. Blitz steps. Aaron cancelled his blitz bolt and replaced it with his movement spell. He again used sedated perception, stacking its effect. This gave him the boost he needed to dodge all the projectiles Renita had been spraying all around her and at him. Renita knew by now that she wouldn't always be able to keep track of Aaron's movement when he uses his movement spell to its fullest. That's why she hadn't relaxed even when he retreated. Because she knew he could gain his ground just as quickly as he lost it. So Renita had been firing all around her. She had a crossbow in one hand. While with the other, she had manifested her usual mana gun. She didn't care about her mana expenditure anymore. Because she had realized by now that stretching the battle was nigh impossible with Aaron in her current state. Aaron had to pay the price for approaching Renita even with his astonishing reflexes and speed. Renita's anticipatory rounds weren't all random. She had studied the butcher's moves and targeted the spots that she knew he could approach from. See. A mana bullet grazed Aaron's cheeks and sped past it, buzzing in his ears as it tore through the space. There were a few more bullets that had found their targets. Aaron had concentrated on dodging all the arrows coming his way this time. So he couldn't dodge all the bullets. He had decided to dodge the arrows despite knowing they would be following him. He had a plan to make them target their caster if and when he closed in on Renita. He would use Renita as his meat shield to defend against the homing arrows. That way she'll either have to discard those mana arrows or suffer the consequences. Aaron's plan worked this time. He successfully got close enough to strike and got behind Renita. He cancelled his stacked time element spell and his movement spell when he was a few inches away from her back. The butcher had already stored his weapons away. He grabbed Renita's waist with one hand from behind while the other hand's index finger caressed her right cheek. The index finger had blitz bolt running through it, causing a tingling sensation. Renita only saw Aaron's after images dancing around her for a short time. And then her waist was grabbed from behind. Before she could comprehend what had happened, her right cheek felt weird. There was something crawling on it that was extremely cold yet extremely hot. It was a familiar feeling she had felt so many times before. It was an indication for her that she had lost. The tingling sensation had distracted her for a short moment. And that moment was enough for the homing arrows to get close to her. They would soon be targeting their caster if they weren't discarded. Renita sighed and waved her hand. The arrows were dissolved in the same air they were birthed from when they were only a few centimeters away from her. I lost again. Aaron heard Renita's downcast voice while she was still in the position she was at. So he let go of her cheek and lifted his hand off of her waist before standing in front of her. You did lose, Renita. But that's also a good thing. Renita had a blank face after she listened to Aaron. The latter tried cheering her in his broken way. This was a genuine effort instead of his usual bullshitting. But for some reason, it came out wrong. Ernie, that's not how you should encourage this girl. Tell her she is getting better than her previous self. Reen spoke in his mind after hearing her master bomb his interactions with the ranger. Aaron had a hard time agreeing with Reen. Taking advice like this from someone who couldn't even speak the language a few months back didn't sit right with him. But eventually, he gave in to his pet. I mean you are getting better than your previous self, Renita. Your progress is terrifying. That's what's most crucial right now. Renita shook her head in denial before answering. You don't get it, Aaron. I want you to see me as your equal. Not your follower. The butcher was stumped. He didn't want to play dumb. But he also didn't want to reciprocate her feelings. Renita read those feelings in his eyes and continued herself. I know you don't see us together, Aaron. Not anytime soon. Or maybe forever. I don't know how you feel about us. But I know what I feel about us. Aaron couldn't keep quiet after hearing Renita's statement that bordered on a confession. Renita, why do you want to be with me? What do you see in me? I don't think I'll ever be a suitable partner to you or anyone else. Why do you want to torture yourself by waiting for someone that'll never knock on your doors? Renita didn't answer immediately. She pondered every word Aaron had said. She would be lying if she told him she wasn't hurt by his reply. But at the same time, she was expecting this. So the ranger looked in the butcher's eyes, placed her hand gently on his chest where his heart was before speaking up. Aaron, remember when you had told us that the pursuit of power doesn't need a reason? It is indeed true. But the same can be said about love. The pursuit of love doesn't need a reason either. What good is a long life obtained by higher ranking status if we don't have the crayons of emotions to color it up? Shouldn't we try to gain everything that this life has to offer? You take pride in being selfish. How can you be selfish when you let go of one of the most significant aspects of life? I don't want to have any regrets, Aaron. If I can obtain everything this life has to offer, then when my time comes, I won't fear the Reaper. Shouldn't we try to gain everything that this life has to offer? Not having to fear the Reaper. Renita's words were repeated in Aaron's mind as he remembered memories from his previous timeline. He also remembered the cold and callous place he was sent to briefly after he had died. What would it be like to not be scared of that place? Chapter 265, Talk with the Royal Bastard. His mind replayed Renita's words and he recalled all his memories from the previous timeline. He also remembered the cold and callous place he was sent to briefly after he had died. What would it be like to not be scared of that place? The butcher was agitated and irritated by Renita's reply. It was something that was shaking his whole being from within. Her words evoked those feelings and memories of his past life that he had been trying to bury deep in his soul. Aaron remembered how Sienna treated him in his past timeline. He recalled the pool of emotions he had swirling inside his head that washed away all his hopes for having real relationships. Renita could see in Aaron's eyes that he was struggling. She thought it was because of her or something she said that hurt him. So she lifted her hand from Aaron's chest and took his hand in hers before trying to calm his mind. Aaron, I don't know why, but it feels like you were hurt because of something I said. I'm sorry for that. Please know that it wasn't my intention. I didn't want to be pushy, trust me. The reason I told you this was because I feel like you are always way ahead of all of us. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to say those words to you in the future. So I said this today when I found the right moment. The shadow of death looms over every ranker's life no matter how cautious we want to be. And as I said, I don't have to have any regrets when my time comes. The storm of emotions running amok in Aaron's head finally quieted down when Renita talked some sense into him. He had subconsciously connected Renita's words with his previous memories. She meant to erase those memories from his mind and replace them with new ones that could take their place. Renita. Aaron Idril, there you are. Long time no see, man. Can we? Oh. Aaron was about to say something to Renita that even he wasn't sure of. But fortunately or unfortunately, he was interrupted by a foreign yet not so foreign voice. He and Renita both looked in the direction of that voice to see Jason's team coming their way. Jason was the one who had spoken those words. He stopped his sentence midway after seeing that this wasn't the right time for him to intrude on the guy's personal space. This was when he was having a moment with what seemed to be his girlfriend. But it was already too late. Jason could see it on Renita's face that he had already ruined the moment. He might as well go ahead and talk business with Aaron now that the guy was here. Otherwise, Aaron had become kinda like a slippery eel every time Jason tried to get close to him. Aaron saw Jason heading his way. The latter was the last guy he wanted to see these days. But frankly, he had run out of excuses to ignore and get away from him. Especially now, when Aaron wasn't in his finest mental state. Damn it! This guy, he is the flag bearer of bad news. Aaron cursed himself for allowing himself to become vulnerable in his heart. The reason Aaron didn't want to meet Jason or form a close connection with him was simple. Dom Walker was the original owner of Reen in Aaron's past timeline. He made his demon beast taming official and was subsequently invited to the kingdom's capital. His journey to stardom and becoming one of Edinburgh's most celebrated heroes was famous throughout the entire kingdom. When Dom's name was widely known, another detail spread throughout the kingdom. Arthur Reener, the Duke of Edinburgh, had a bastard son named Jason. This bastard son had supported Dom under his banner and was later named as Arthur's successor. Jason's past was revealed slowly to the masses. And his struggle from the bottom of the hierarchy to his entry into the kingdom's elite club had been an inspiration for many, especially all the royal and non-royal bastards who aspired to have their names etched in the annals of history like him. Aaron was also in the know regarding Jason's story. He had later found out that it was the same guy he had seen in the academy. At that time Aaron was struggling to make ends meet. So he had even tried to use his association with the guy a few times to get out of some situation. But alas, nobody would believe him when he told them the Duke-to-be was his batchmate from LA. It was only in this life that Aaron had found it odd for Jason to start his academic journey from the city of Ozan. And only after he tamed Reen did he start to see why the royal bastard was doing at a backwater place. Aaron guessed that Jason had something to do with the experiments conducted on in the Ozan woods. Even if he wasn't directly related, he must have known something about it. Jason taking Dom under his banner was a clear indication of the same. So meeting a guy like Jason and having a conversation with him wasn't something Aaron could take lightly. He had tried every possible way to ignore and get away from him. But alas, he couldn't ignore him forever. Aaron, is this the wrong time? Jason asked while looking at his hand which was held by Renita at the time. The ranger became conscious after she followed Jason's gaze and released her grip. You stupid woman. Hold my hand, damn it. Hold it now when I need it the most. Aaron wanted to say that it was indeed a terrible time for Jason to interrupt. But Renita's sudden action finally sealed the deal. Aaron sighed, internally and out in the open as well. It was time to talk with the royal bastard. Chapter 266, Loose Cannon. Aaron sighed, internally and out in the open as well. It was time to talk with the bastard. We were just practicing, Jason. What's up? Aaron assumed his casual form soon after. If avoiding Jason was impossible, he might as well use this meeting to gain intel on him. He just needed to make sure that no detail regarding Reen or Ozanwood's butcher got slipped by him. It's about our talk the other day. I wonder if you have time now that you are over with your practice for the day. Jason asked again as a formality. But it was clear from his stance that he wasn't willing to take no for an answer. Jason was accompanied by Ivor and Veronica who stood behind either side. If stairs could stab, Ivor's gaze would have poked holes all over Aaron's body many times over. The butcher guessed that the guy hadn't forgotten about his epic defeat by his hands even now. Veronica was eyeing him too. But Aaron could tell her gaze was different from Ivor. She was embarrassed to make eye contact with him because of how the fight between them had ended. Yeah. Let's go grab our supper while we are at it. Aaron agreed and shifted the venue of their talk to one of the LA's canteens. He told his team to continue practicing. But for some reason, Renita decided to follow him. Aaron, you are from the city of Ozan. Tell me what you think about Ozanwood's butcher. Jason began shooting rapid fire right off the bat. Aaron was expecting a question like this. So he didn't panic. He took his time before replying. Frankly, I had forgotten about the wanted criminal until you mentioned him. I am too distant from the whole affair to offer an opinion. I suppose he should be apprehended for the crimes he has committed. Other than that, I don't have any strong points to make. Aaron said this and took another bite of his bread dipped in pork sorpotel. There had been a lot of Earth-Suity subjugation missions in the Basank. LA would take all the necessary ingredients from the beasts' bodies and supply the rest to its canteens. That's why the canteens had a lot of pork-centric dishes these days. That's fair. But what do you think about the whole case retrospectively? Is it occultist activity like everybody thinks it is? Or are they using the cultists as an excuse to wash their hands off the case? I'm asking this because I know that your Aunt Nina was part of the investigation that was conducted by the city administration. You must have picked up a pointer or two from that investigation. Jason was having a hard time watching Aaron eat like he was starving for days. But that didn't deter him from asking his questions. The questions that he had been meaning to ask from the first time they had met. In case you weren't aware, Jason, I didn't assist Aunt Nina much in her investigation. And her involvement in the case was pretty brief too if you ask me. However I feel about Ozenwood's butcher, it will not affect what he did or will do. So why should I make an opinion in the first place? Aaron took a short pause after he finished the loaf of bread he was eating. He quickly grabbed one from Renita's plate and looked at Jason before continuing. But it seems that you want me to go the extra mile to entertain you, hee. Fine then. Here's what I think. Ozenwood's butcher was a smart ranker. He or she got into the woods, did what they had been intending to do with surgical precision, and got away from the crime scene just as cleanly. We can debate the identity of the butcher all we want. But that won't erase what he had done. Neither will it affect him. Do you know what I think? The butcher will be more harmful to society when their identity is revealed. Tooting your own horn, I see. Reen spoke in Aaron's mind and laughed when she heard Aaron speak about himself in the third person. Jason listened to Aaron talk and he had to admit he was right on point. He had thought that Aaron knew something about the case because of the way he had provoked Ivor into spilling beans. But the royal bastard thought maybe he had judged the guy too soon. One had to admit that Aaron's poker face was impeccable. It did not betray the facade he was trying to maintain. Therefore, nobody could see through him. But it seemed that it still wasn't enough for a certain someone. Why do you think OWB was a smart ranker, you punk? If he had been smarter, he wouldn't have killed so many LA students in the woods. This paints a bullseye on his back that he can't get rid of. You remember who was among the people he killed, right? My stupid brother. If they were half as smart as you claim the butcher to be, they would have let those students go instead of leaving the trail of death behind them. Blame it on your brother, dude. He left me no choice. Ivor was trying to pick an argument with Aaron, thinking he was opposing his opinion. But this time, Aaron completely agreed with him. Look, Ivor, if you want a rematch, just say that out loud. We don't need to have a personal reason to fight. I'm ready anytime as long as the amount of merps you place as a wager is tempting enough. BRRRRRRRRGH. Aaron finished his speech and his meal at the same time and burped carelessly. His plate was the only one that had gotten empty before everyone else, whereas others had only just started eating. Aaron narrowed his eyes on Jason as he asked in a patient tone that was laced with seriousness. It's my turn to ask questions now, Jason. You are so fixated on Ozenwood's butcher. Even more so than Ivor who had gotten his brother killed by him no less. How are you related to the case? And what's that got to do with why are you trying to talk to me today? Chapter 267, Retainers. The way you are so focused on the butcher in Ozenwoods. Even more so than Ivor who had gotten his brother killed by him no less. How are you related to the case? Jason realized that Aaron wasn't being cordial anymore with him after Ivor's tantrum. He looked at Ivor admonishingly before replying. Don't pay attention to Ivor's rude behavior, Aaron. He has lost his elder brother in the incident. So he can't help getting edgy whenever that topic is brought up. I hope you can understand his situation. Aaron stared back at Ivor this time while replying to Jason. Heh. I do understand. Boss your way around students who don't have a prominent background and stay low-key around someone who has a more powerful backer than yours. That's not considered edgy, Jason. That's the way of life for scavenger hyenas. That's it? You punk, let's have a one-on-one right now. The way Aaron compared him to a hyena angered Ivor even further than he already was. He got up from his seat and pointed his finger at Aaron in a provoking way. He wanted to duel with Aaron right away in the ranking war. But he was soon restrained by Jason's words. Ivor, you might want to sit down and let others speak. Everything is not always about you. Aaron, I'll also ask you not to provoke this loose cannon. It's not what you think. This jerk has picked a fight with a lot of people regardless of their backgrounds. Rudy Orton, Sienna Slughorn, and even Ken Riverine, who is known for being one of the friendliest people, have made that cut. In some way or another, Ivor has attempted to make trouble for everyone who has brought up the topic of Ozenwood's butcher. And frankly, I'm done covering his ass. Aaron was shocked at how Ivor had behaved with the big names. He now had to admit that the guy was truly an edgelord. Of course, he didn't say it out loud. Aaron wanted to wrap up the conversation as soon as possible. So he gestured to Jason with his eyes and allowed him to continue. Anyway. You are right. I am involved with the case of Ozenwood's butcher. Or to be more precise, it is related to my father and I was dragged into it as his son. The main purpose of OWB wasn't to kill LA students and commit other heinous crimes in the Ozenwoods. It was to steal something that belonged to me and my father. The killings were only there as collateral. Why am I discussing this right now with you? I just wanted to know a little more about you before giving you a chance to be one of my retainers. You see, Aaron, my background is a bit special. And that requires me to gather some allies who are talented but are not that privileged yet. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? Aaron pretended to be shocked after hearing Jason's speech. He raised his eyebrows before asking to confirm. Retainers, you say? Are you related to the... Jason nodded at Aaron before interrupting him. That's right. But I'm not allowed to make it official yet. I don't have the legitimacy backing me yet, you see. So sharing the secret with you and your friend here can also act as a form of trust between us. What I want from you is pretty simple, Aaron. Would you like to serve under my banner when I obtain that legitimacy? By you, I mean you and Miss Renita here as well. She is no less talented than any of us after all. I'll make sure you are taken care of in terms of ranking resources. Aaron looked at Jason carefully before finally asking. Okay, let's say that what you say is true. Why do you need to gather allies right now? We are on the LA grounds, Jason. You need your teammates to survive here. Not retainers. Then why are you headhunting for lackeys this early in the Royal game? Jason smiled amusingly after hearing Aaron's question. He took his time before responding. Aaron, have you heard of Royal Ren? Jason said this and let his targeted audience figure out the meaning behind it. He knew his statement would detonate like a time bomb in Aaron and Renita's heads. At least for Renita, he got it right. She was shocked when she understood why Jason was looking for retainers. Aaron looked shocked too, but he was expecting this. This was because, although Jason had started his academic journey in LA, he didn't conclude it at the same academy. He had been transferred to Royal Renner sometime after DOM made his demon beast taming public. As a result, Jason of the previous timeline was also waiting for his father's project to be completed in Ozan when Dom's presence ruined their plans. At that point, DOM might have formed some kind of understanding with Jason's father, as he was made to cooperate. Jason stayed in LA for the first year. He left soon and joined Royal Ren after Arthur made sure there were no loose ends with his project, and regarding DOM, Jason's legitimacy was confirmed shortly after he entered Royal Ren. Aaron knew this beforehand. Therefore, he wanted to avoid talking with Jason. His identity as the Ozan Woods Butcher was one thing. Not agreeing with Jason to follow him in Royal Ren would certainly create a rift between them that might have repercussions for him in the future. Maybe Aaron could play it cool and ride the wave, gaining an easy entry into Royal Ren. It was a holy place for all young rankers after all. The place was less like an academy and more of a fast-track guide for rankers to advance rapidly in their rankings. But leaving LA was not something Aaron was willing to do. He did not want to lose the advantage of the past timeline he could use for a future event. Chapter 268, Helping Hands. Leaving LA was not something Aaron was willing to do. Not before that event took place. That's why he didn't take much time before politely refusing Jason's offer. The offer is indeed tempting, Jason. I can't speak for Renita, but I'll have to decline. We all know Royal Ren is not a nice place for commoners like me. Maybe things would work out for you and our friend Ivor here. I can now see why he sticks close to you. You are his ticket to enter the place he couldn't go because of his brother's death. Aaron looked at Ivor and said this in a plain voice. He remembered Ivor's long-winded speech about how he was unable to go to Royal Ren because of Isaac's death. With Jason's support, Aaron didn't think the guy would have to worry about excessive non-disclosure contracts. His succession to Isaac's position also won't be hampered. Ivor wanted to rebuke Aaron but he couldn't. This was exactly why he was mindful around Jason. I'll always, I'll also stay with Aaron. Renita declined Jason's offer as well. Jason raised his eyebrows after hearing Renita's reply and asked them both one last time. Do you guys know what you are denying? Aaron, LA is indeed good for close combat experts. But Royal Ren has top-of-the-line close combat experts serving as assistant professors and professors. Renita, you'll be losing the most out of denying this offer. LA is just not suitable for a capable ranger like you. No matter how much you strive for greatness, your growth will always be stunted here. Are you sure you don't want to change your opinion? Aaron and Renita looked at each other after Jason finished. Aaron could see in Renita's eyes that she wanted to take Jason up on his offer. But not at the cost of getting separated from him. He nodded at her and then looked at the royal bastard before replying. We are positive, Jason. Thanks for asking though. Jason had a stoic expression after he heard Aaron's reply. He wanted to get the close combat expert under his banner who was calm and collected, unlike a certain someone from his team. But since he had received a clear-cut no, it was about time he moved to recruit a few more trusted retainers of his age before his time in LA was up. You'll regret this, punk. Ivor couldn't help giving Aaron a threat before leaving. Only time could tell if it was empty or not. But for now, Aaron didn't feel like engaging with him or Jason. Veronica was silent the whole time. She was trying to steal a glance at Aaron during the whole time of conversation. But Renita would catch her doing so and narrow her eyes looking at her. The ranger's vigilance made the young lady self-conscious, preventing her from observing Aaron up close. There were two groups of rankers meeting inside an abandoned castle ruin. One group was made of two people who had worn eye-catching masks to cover their identities. The other was made of a young elf and three captives. These are the people you want. Do what you want with them. I believe the deal we had with each other is concluded with this delivery, right? Arizi Hannah asked the man in the mask while folding her arms under her bosoms. Reiner and the two young anthropes that were caught and enslaved with him were standing behind her. Their mouths and eyes were sealed with runic inscriptions. Plus, their hands and legs had been chained. You did a good job, Miss Arizi Hannah. Nobody is looking for them, right? The broad-shouldered man asked to confirm. Ari nodded before responding. That's right. I did what you asked me to do. Lent them from the city administration under a made-up Beast Bloods case and declared them dead on paper soon after. There's no heat in taking them. The masked man seemed pleased. Haha. Good. Then I believe our business is done here, Miss Arizi Hannah. Ari felt a little relieved when she heard the reply from the masked man. She was also smiling internally, thinking she had played him. You'll soon regret blackmailing me, you masked bastard. Ari had just thought this when she heard the masked man's deep voice. I hope you don't try to pull a fast one on me with this deal, Miss Arizi Hannah. Otherwise, I won't be responsible for the fallout. Did this guy just read my mind? Ari thought and labeled it as a coincidence before replying coldly. I hope you also don't try to do anything mischievous for your own sake. I'll be going if there's nothing else. Arizi Hannah soon left the ruined castle building. Ronnie aka Aaron waited for some more time before asking his pet about something. Reen, are they clean? Reen spread her mana sense and covered Reiner and the other two young anthropes, affecting their psyches. The three captives were scared shitless when they felt the mana sense that was scanning them. But they couldn't run nor call for help. All they could do was to stay still and wait for the nightmare to get over. Apart from the weird smell they now carry, nothing else that sticks out like a sore thumb. Reen shared her findings with her master. Aaron scratched his chin when he realized what was done to the captives. Weird smell, huh? Since Marie was a former apprentice of Levine, I can imagine her concocting a potion that can help Arizi Hannah track Reiner and the rest when she wants to. And this after I had told that cute elf to not try anything funny with me. I was half expecting this anyway. Aaron thought and shook his head. He was going to let Arizi Hannah go without making her connections to the cultists known to anyone. There was no benefit to be had making her a wanted criminal in Edinburgh after all. How should we get rid of the smell, Ernie? Should we consult Levine discreetly? Reen asked in the butcher's head. She had fused with Aaron once again after Ari had left. To which he smiled cunningly before making his intentions known to her. Why should we? Let her track us. Hee hee. We were short on the number of helping hands anyway. Chapter 269, I Desire This Power. Aaron released Reiner and the rest. Then introduced him to them as Ronnie, a fellow anthrope who wanted their participation in exploring a place meant for rankers like them. Reiner could feel it in the butcher's address that the possibility of their participation wasn't up for the debate. The guy whose 3 limbs Aaron had chopped off in his fight with him now had 3 different limbs attached in their place. They were limbs taken from other dead rankers of the same rank. The surgeon had done a good job patching the guy up. But he couldn't do anything about the different skin tones and textures he now carried on his doctored body. Introduce yourself. Ronnie asked Reiner and the rest in a commanding voice. The captives couldn't see the C-rank entity that had scanned them, but they were wary of its existence. They couldn't underestimate Ronnie either because of the fierce aura surrounding him. Name's Reiner, Sir Ronnie. I'm glad someone from the Beast Bloods came to save us. Our surrender to the city of Silvermoon. Ronnie raised his hand and told the guy to stop with the act. I'm indeed an anthrope like you. And I was once part of Beast Bloods too. But not anymore. So you don't need to explain yourself about how and why you were caught. Reiner realized that there were no Beast Bloods higher behind this guy. And the exploration he was going to be part of wasn't planned by his previous organization. All right. I'll keep things concise then. I'm Reiner. Boys, out with your names too. The young anthrope who had previously gotten beaten up by Ken introduced himself as Viper. And the guy whose limbs Aaron had hacked introduced himself as Biller. Reiner, Viper, and Biller. Good to meet you. Before I let you understand your assignments, I want to see how well you can fight and use your anthrope powers. Reiner, you are up first. We'll fight without using any spells. Aaron wanted to see how effective his new pawns were going to be. He wanted to gauge their strength so he could make effective use of them. Plus, he had never fought using his E-rank strengthening before. Anthropes had access to the same type of spells other rankers had. But they were blessed with relatively higher body stats. The anthropes who could implement the high body stat values into their battle styles and turn that into their strengths would have the edge over normal rankers. Aaron asked Reiner to fight without using any spell because he couldn't use any E-rank spell. Only his body was strengthened to the E rank by Reen's fusion after all. He couldn't use the E rank spells on the borrowed body boosts. Reener nodded his head and manifested his anthrope transformation. His transformation was based on a crocodile-type mana beast. As a result of which the transformation turned his skin dark green before loads of scuds were formed on its surface. These scuds enforced the skin and made it more resilient. These scuds were the reason Almera's wind arrows couldn't take care of Reener previously. Eren used Therianthropic transformation mimicry as well while Reen had strengthened his body into E rank. Since they were going to fight without any spells, Eren could focus on testing his and the genuine anthrope body's limits. Don't hold back. Eren shouted before bolting towards Reener. The latter had also understood that Eren meant business and no half-assed performance was going to impress him. Eren aka Ronnie and Reener got within striking range of each other. The former made a chopping action aiming for the target's neck, which was blocked by the latter just as swiftly. Reener launched his counter by trying to land a blow to Eren's stomach with his right knee. Even without the time element spell, Eren's perception in close combat range had gotten pretty sharp. He saw Reener's right knee heading for his stomach. Instead of blocking it or stepping aside, he used his left foot to step on it, using it as a springboard to jump over his target. Swoom. Eren became airborne when he successfully pulled that move. But the fight had just started. He united his right hand's fingers into a fist and swung it forward as he was being dragged down by gravity. His fist was aiming at the guy's cranium. Reener saw that Eren had almost disappeared on him when he tried low-blowing him with his knee. Before he could register what had happened, his mana sense told him the attack was going to come from above. Reener braced his arms in X formation up above his head without looking up. The timing was impeccable as the punch landed right in the middle of the X formation as soon as it was made. Eren's E rank strengthening wasn't all for the show. It packed a punch as it cracked the ground on which Reener was standing. 5 feet wide and 2 feet deep crater was formed with Reener standing in the middle of it. But Reener himself was not injured at all. The crocodile scuds had absorbed most of the impact, enabling the genuine anthrope to carry on fighting. That's impressive. Eren thought as he praised the resilience of the anthrope's body. For some reason, it excited him too. If a copy can produce such promising results, how effective should a genuine demi-human transformation be? I desire this power. Eren thought and subconsciously grabbed Reener's wrist. An unfelt before pulse of mana was generated at that time. Eren's skin melted and spread across the guy's hand. It created a sizzling noise as the anthrope's skin melted. Eren's liquefied skin absorbed all that plus Reener's blood, producing a steam-like mana residue in the process. Arrgh. Reener yelled in agony. He couldn't understand what was happening to his arm. The guy told him there wouldn't be any spell usage. But now he felt stupid believing in some random man. Eren was bewildered too. He couldn't make heads or tails of what was happening to him or his unintended victim. But in the next second, the hand that had grabbed Reener's almost melted wrist also turned dark green and had crocodile-like scuds over it. Chapter 270, First Innate Spell. Eren was bewildered too. He couldn't make heads or tails of what was happening to him or his unintended victim. But in the next second, the hand that had grabbed Reener's almost melted wrist also turned dark green and had crocodile-like scuds over it. Eren couldn't think of what to do or react next. So he activated his F-rank sedated perception to buy himself some time. What is this? Reen, you have any idea? Reen pondered for a moment before replying. This seems to be the innate spell that I use to digest my food. How did you learn it? Eren smiled mirthlessly in his head before responding. He. Beats me. I didn't feel like I was casting a spell either. It was as natural and effortless as breathing. Reen thought of something and asked her master to confirm. Ernie, do you think demi-humans have inherent spells of the beasts they have absorbed the bloodlines of? Some sort of understanding dawned on Eren after Reen made her line of thoughts known to him. Quite possible. So inherent spell is what you get when a spell stops being a spell. I will have to experiment with this power later on. This is not the time to make the pawns wary of me. Reen, how can I bring things back to normal? Reen shared her experiences of using her inherent spell with her master. Eren used those experiences to control the spell that had just awakened. For some reason, Eren could taste some blood in his mouth which he knew wasn't his. His head also felt heavy and the arm that had displayed the properties of crocodile skin felt sore after it returned to normal. Evidently, the inherent spell had a few side effects. Eren's arm returned to normal. But the same could not be said about Reener's hand. Thankfully, only a small section of the epidermis of the hand had been melted and the rest of the skin underneath it was still intact. So it wasn't a serious injury. At most, it would look like the epidermis had been burnt off by a fire spell. Eren cast an F-rank fireball spell before quickly discarding it. This was to cover the traces of an inherent spell he had just executed. The butcher hadn't figured out the whole thing yet. There was no reason for him to inform his pawns of the phenomenon that had just occurred. He then cancelled sedated perception to process the time normally. You lied to me. Why are you using the spell when you told me not to? Rainer complained and shouted as he looked up. He looked up just when Aaron had discarded the fireball spell after activating it. Aaron was still in midair. He pushed against Rainer's defensive X-guard and used the recoil to jump back in the air. He did this before straightening himself and landing safely on his feet a few meters away from the anthrope. He retrieved an F-rank healing potion from his storage and threw it to Rainer before replying. My bad, Rainer. I accidentally activated my spell without intending to. You can use this potion to heal your wounds. Aaron said and then looked at Balor and Viper who were standing at a distance from the mock battleground. He was sure he had been quick enough in covering up the incident, preventing two novices from noticing the unusual nature of the incident. In contrast, Rainer was too overwhelmed by pain to notice that a strange pulse of mana originated above his head. Rainer did feel weird about an E-ranker using the F-rank spell in a fight where he had proposed not to use any spell. He also wondered how an F-rank spell could hurt his E-rank body. But rankers had many ways to pull something off like this. Aaron felt like he should try the same thing with Viper and Balor too. But he needed them as pawns for his exploration of Ranker's purgatory. Therefore, he didn't want them to be scared by him. So he dropped the plan. Aaron no longer fought with Rainer. Viper and Balor were only asked to show him their fighting prowess by battling each other. The two obliged. Alright, this is enough. You guys will have to sign a binding contract with me before I make some arrangements for you. It'll take some time before we start our exploration. So rest well while honing your battle skills in the meantime. Are there any questions? Balor raised his hands and asked without any fear. You are from the Beast Bloods. How come we never heard anything about you while we were in the organization? Were you active in another region? And why us? Aaron in Ronnie's avatar just shrugged his shoulders before saying. I was indeed active in a different part of Edinburgh and didn't hear about you guys either until only recently. It is bothersome to locate the disbanded Beast Bloods members, so I just freed you guys whose location was now public knowledge. Balor tried asking some more questions. But Aaron just released his mana sense and spread it across the region after getting irritated by the young anthrope's persistent attitude. Rainer, Viper, and Balor at the time subconsciously felt like they were being suppressed by a higher form of existence than them. They stopped asking questions as a result. Aaron had already arranged an anonymous place for the three anthropes to spend a few days at. He was going to call them to action only at the time of purgatory exploration. He gave some more instructions to the anthrope before allowing them to depart from the place. Ernie, what are you planning to do with them exactly? Reen assumed the form of Selena sometime after she and his master were alone at the ruined castle and asked. The latter looked at the orange-red sky colored by the setting sun and replied slowly. I am not sure. At first, I wanted to use them as disposable pawns in purgatory. But now I feel like I should use them to carry out some experiments. Let's see what happens in purgatory. I'll try to keep them alive if I can help it. We are running short on time because of the multitude of pies I've dipped my fingers in. Sigh. We'll have to focus on my shop and get it running before I enter Ranker's purgatory. Aaron concluded and started to walk away from his previous position. Reen followed after him. He needed to get his affairs in order before he could experiment with his newly obtained inherent spell. The inherent spell wasn't the only thing he had gained today. He looked at his normal body stats on the spectral screen after he had returned to normal. The butcher had a smile on his face when he saw the progress that had happened over just a few minutes. Part 9 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.